Chapter 502. A man holding a spear fought a great battle against the subterranean blood dragon? Qin Yu was so angry that he wanted to curse. Why were those people that were saved by Qin Yu and his brothers so talkative? Right at the moment when Qin Yu and his brothers were looking at each other, rumbling sounds were heard. That was the sound of a large number of troops galloping. Qin Yu and his brothers looked toward the depths of the tunnel. They saw numerous Divine Realm warriors rapidly rushing toward them. That densely packed army gave off an oppressive feeling. "Milord, the 1,000 men of the 3rd Battalion have all arrived," a tall robust man said respectfully. Yu Qiyong nodded indifferently. However, his gaze was still fixed on Qin Yu and his brothers. "Speak, where is the man holding a spear and fighting the subterranean cave dragon?" "Milord, we did not see him." Qin Yu slightly bowed and said. Ho Fei and Kuro stood behind Qin Yu without saying anything. Yu Qiyong examined the three of them with his gaze. He then turned around and looked at the battlefield that was filled with bones and flesh. He then looked at the tunnel walls that were torn apart by the subterranean cave dragon. "Where were you all earlier? Why didn't you see him?" Yu Qiyong said with a frown. Qin Yu pointed to a collapsed tunnel and said, "Milord, when that subterranean cave dragon attacked us earlier, I knew that it was merely a monstrous beast. Even though its attack power was very strong, its soul's realm was inferior to that of a deity's. Thus, the three of us hid within the collapsed rubble and waited until the subterranean cave dragon left before coming out." "Amen, you're pretty smart." Yu Qiyong nodded. With what Qin Yu said, it was very easy to explain why they didn't see anyone fighting the subterranean cave dragon. If they hid within the rubble, how would they be able to see other people fighting? Observe with their divine awareness? That rubble was several hundred meters away from the battlefield. Only low-level heavenly deities would be able to extend their divine awareness to several hundred meters away. The subterranean cave dragon went back into hiding? Yu Qiyong stared at the shattered tunnel with a deep frown on his face. Even if the subterranean cave dragon was killed, its corpse should still exist. Even a heavenly god realm expert would not be able to kill a cave dragon so easily. As for Qin Yu and the other two, from Yu Qiyang's point of view, only the leader, Qin Yu, had the soul of a high-level deity while the other two were merely low-level deities. It was impossible for him to be the one to deal with the subterranean cave dragon. "You can leave now," Yu Qiyong said coldly. "Yes, sir," Qin Yu said humbly and politely. Then the three brothers followed the safe tunnel that did not collapse and quickly left the interior of the mine. After Qin Yu and his brothers paid 3,600 low-quality divine spiritual stones, they entered a new underground tunnel in another region of the divine spiritual stone mine. The three of them walked all the way to an extremely deep and uninhabited region. Only then did the three of them enter the Zhonglan's realm. Inside the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm. "Big Brother, earlier, when that heavenly deity interrogated us about whether or not we saw anyone fighting against the subterranean cave dragon, I was extremely anxious. Never would I have expected that Big Brother would be able to think of an answer so quickly." Ho Fei laughed. Kuro also nodded gravely. "That Yu Qiyong is indeed powerful. He is a heavenly deity." Qin Yu understood in his heart. Although he was able to fly, he was only able to do so by relying on Lu Xing's tear. Furthermore, the energy within his body was divine energy and not heavenly divine energy. Heavenly deities that possess heavenly divine energy are much more powerful than me. "Unless I use the divine spear waning snow," Qin Yu said with a light smile. Once he used the divine spear waning snow, it would not be too hard for him to kill low-level heavenly deities. "Well then, don't waste time. Continue training. The Divine Realm's body refinement technique that Uncle Fu gave you back then, how's your training going?" Qin Yu asked with a smile. Divine Realm's body refinement techniques could be considered to be rather precious. However, within the Bewitching God Temple, there were many of such body refinement techniques in the Divine Realm. Qin Yu himself was worried that he did not have enough time. He had practically spent all of his time researching the array path. Thus, He had not trained in any body refinement techniques for the time being. Qin Yu could only allow his body to naturally absorb divine energy to increase its strength. However, this sort of primitive method of training was too slow. Hou Fei shook his head and said, "I have yet to train in it." "Neither have I." Kuro also shook his head. "What's going on?" "I instructed Uncle Fu to pass those divine realms body refinement techniques to you. Why aren't you training in them?" In the divine realm, especially in the deity stage, body refinement is extremely important. Qin Yu said doubtfully. In the divine realm, energy was mainly divided into divine energy and heavenly divine energy. Among them, divine energy belonged to the more berserk and tyrannical type of energy. During the training process, the burden on the body was extremely large. Only by having a stronger body would one be able to possess a higher level of divine energy. On the other hand, heavenly divine energy was different. Heavenly divine energy was pure and gentle. Thus, body refinement only required one to be able to withstand the divine energy of a high-level deity. Of course, there were some heavenly deities who would pursue a stronger body. However, those were the minority. To heavenly deities, the best way to increase their strength was to comprehend more about space. Big brother. Kuro had a trace of a smile on his face. In the past 60,000 years, although Monkey and I did not train in any divine realms body refinement techniques, we have been quietly training in order to increase the level of our soul. Hou Fei also said, "Mixed hairbird and my body are still not bad. At the very least, we have not reached the stage where we are unable to withstand the divine energy. Thus, we wish to increase the level of our soul before training our body." Increasing the level of our soul is also fine. Qin Yu thought for a moment before nodding his head. From Qin Yu's point of view, body refinement was much easier than increasing the level of one's soul. Body refinement only required a sufficient supply of divine energy and a bit of time. However, increasing the level of one's soul was too difficult. Ordinary deities would need tens of millions of years to reach the level of an intermediate deity. Hou Fei and Kuro relied on the cloud-piercing spear and black rod. Thus, their speed might be fast. However, they would still need tens of thousands of years. Since his brother wanted to focus on increasing the level of his soul, Qin Yu did not force him. Soon after, Qin Yu returned to his room and started to comprehend the 900 scrolls of the array path. Hou Fei and Kuro also started to cultivate. The 900 scrolls of the array path were divided into killing arrays, trapping arrays, and defensive arrays. Qin Yu spent close to 60,000 years before he could carefully comprehend it once. And now, Qin Yu was not in a hurry to deduce higher-level or more complex arrays. Instead, he started to re-examine the array examples in the 900 scrolls of the array path. For the first 60,000 years, Qin Yu only managed to comprehend it completely. But now, Qin Yu wanted to use the examples in the 900 scrolls of the array path to completely comprehend it. He wanted to deduce many things from one example and completely understand the essence of these arrays. Time passed by. Qin Yu continued to study the most basic and fundamental arrays in the Sea of Arrays, or some slightly difficult arrays. These formation arrays that were at the bottom of the pyramid of formation arrays, Qin Yu was studying them over and over again. 30,000 years of effort. Qin Yu kept the 900 scrolls of the array path. At the same time, his closed eyes opened. There was a trace of excitement in his eyes. "Uncle Fu!" Qin Yu shouted. Uncle Fu heard Qin Yu's voice and immediately walked into Qin Yu's room. He said respectfully, "Master, what are your orders?" "Uncle Fu, let me ask you." The first level of the array path is it to comprehend the essence of arrays, from simple to complex, and to be able to think of any array in an instant? Qin Yu's face was filled with excitement. That was because Qin Yu was able to sense that he seemed to have reached the first stage of the array path. At this moment, Qin Yu had a feeling that the arrangement of all kinds of formation arrays were all within his mind. When he closed his eyes, thousands upon thousands of different formation arrays would appear in his mind. At the same time, he could instantly think of the key points, weaknesses, and ways to break the arrays. This feeling of having everything under his control caused Qin Yu to feel extremely delighted. Uncle Fu smiled and looked at Qin Yu. Master, as far as I know, among the experts who comprehended the first level of the array path, the fastest one took 100,000 years. Old Master spent 1,000,000 years to comprehend the first level of the array path. Master only spent close to 90,000 years. It seems that your talent in the array path is indeed very good. Qin Yu couldn't help but smile. Old Master once said that the state of comprehending the first level of the array Tao is, the moment you close your eyes, billions of array formations will appear in your mind. These billions of array formations are the ones that you've thoroughly studied before. At the same time, you have a feeling that you can easily deduce countless more complicated arrays. Master, is that so? Yes, that's right. I even have a feeling that as long as I am given time, I can deduce arrays that are thousands of times more complicated, Qin Yu said. That was the feeling he had. The first level of the array path is the essence of the array path. However, the essence of the array path that everyone comprehended is different. Master, do you think that any array can be easily broken? Uncle Fu smiled and said. Qin Yu was stunned. Qin Yu wanted to nod because he had that feeling at this moment. After comprehending the foundation of the array, Qin Yu felt that he could break any array through the foundation. After all, any complicated array was evolved from the foundation of the array. Logically speaking, Qin Yu knew that in a short 90,000 years, it was impossible to reach the level of breaking any array. Master, I don't have a soul, so I can't comprehend the first realm of the array Tao. I can only deduce the most basic array formations and continue to deduce more and more complex ones, Uncle Fu said with a smile. Qin Yu looked at Uncle Fu in confusion. He didn't know what Uncle Fu meant. Uncle Fu continued. Master, I have followed Old Master for a very long time. I have also been deducing arrays for a very long time. At the beginning, when I was deducing arrays, I could deduce them in my mind. However, as the arrays became more and more complicated, I had to use golden scrolls to deduce an array. Qin Yu nodded. This was easy to explain. For example, if an ordinary person wanted to solve a simple problem, they could calculate it in their mind. However, if it was complicated, they would need to calculate it on paper. After researching for so many years, I have also recorded some more complicated arrays. At the same time, I have also used some golden scrolls. Master, during the time in the immortal devil and demon realm, plus the 90,000 years, I have just deduced a killing array. Master, please have a look at it. Uncle Fu flipped his hand and took out 3 golden scrolls. He then handed them to Qin Yu. Uncle Fu, don't tell me that a single array needs 3 golden scrolls? Qin Yu's face was filled with shock. The most complicated arrays in the 900 scrolls of the array path probably only took up 1/10,000th of the space in a golden scroll. Uncle Fu nodded respectfully. Master, this is the most powerful array I've deduced from the killing array. There are 3 golden scrolls recorded in it. Please judge, Master. Chapter 503. Qin Yu glanced at Uncle Fu a few times before receiving the 3 golden scrolls. To ordinary deities, golden scrolls could be considered precious items. However, to the bewitching God Temple, these items used for recording were in the tens of millions. Qin Yu immediately used his divine awareness to carefully inspect these 3 golden scrolls. How large was the capacity of these 3 golden scrolls? Even if he did not study them, and merely skimmed through them, Qin Yu still spent an entire 4 years to finish reading these 3 golden scrolls. Killing formation? Qin Yu closed his eyes. The contents of the 4 years of reading completely appeared in his mind. Immediately, an incomparably enormous formation appeared in Qin Yu's mind. That formation was so complicated that Qin Yu was completely unable to see through its composition. I have already completely understood the basics. However, why am I unable to see through this formation at all? Qin Yu was somewhat anxious in his heart. Qin Yu was merely attempting to decipher this formation in his mind. Immediately, the formation began to change. Flames filled the sky. Within the flames, A large amount of lightning violently struck down. Qin Yu fiercely discarded all of the contents in his mind. Opening his eyes, the pale-faced Qin Yu looked at Uncle Fu in front of him. His eyes were filled with confusion. Uncle Fu, why? Originally, I did not see any fire attribute or lightning attribute attacks at all. However, just by touching it for a moment, fire attribute and lightning attribute attacks appeared? If it was someone who did not have any understanding of formations, they would not know how powerful this formation was at all. However, Qin Yu could be considered to have stepped into the palace of formations. Although he was unable to understand the true power of this killing formation, when the formation was activated and the malevolent killing move was revealed, Qin Yu still understood. Master, I had once asked the old master a question. I asked the old master, since you had already comprehended the first level of the array path and even the second level of the array path, why did you research it again? Furthermore, why did you spend 1 billion years to comprehend the first level of the array path? Uncle Fu smiled as he looked at Qin Yu. Master, do you know how the old master replied? Qin Yu shook his head. Uncle Fu continued. The old master said that when you learn to write 1, 2, and 3, you can claim to have comprehended all the ways to write numbers. Isn't that ridiculous? Qin Yu nodded. The old master also said that the array formation ocean is boundless. Many people only studied a small corner of the array formation ocean and then comprehended the essence of the array formation from that small corner. Is that the true essence? Qin Yu somewhat understood in his heart. If he only studied the 900 scrolls of the array Tao, the first stage of the array Tao that he comprehended might be wrong. Many people think that they are very impressive for comprehending the first level of the array path. But if they want to comprehend the second level of the array path, it is very, very difficult. The reason for that is because the wrong first stage of the formation path is not enough for them to comprehend the second stage of the formation path. Uncle Fu seemed to be recalling the words spoken by Che-Ho Yuan back then. Qin Yu listened carefully. At this moment, it was as if Che-Ho Yuan was using Uncle Fu to tell Qin Yu some important points. The old master once said that the more a formation expert comprehends about the array formation, the more they will believe that they have only comprehended a small corner of the array formation ocean. The old master comprehended the unprecedented third stage of the array path and became the #1 formation expert in the divine realm. Later on, he also became the #1 weapon refiner. However, the old master said himself that the array formation is still more profound than what he had comprehended. The third stage of the array path is not the end. The boundless sea of learning. Qin Yu felt an intense shock in his heart. He also felt ashamed. He was shocked because he had comprehended the third stage of the array path. The #1 formation expert in the divine realm thought that the third stage of the array path was not the end. He was ashamed because he had only studied it for 90,000 years and thought that he had comprehended the essence of the array formation. Don't shake a full bottle, shake a half bottle. Uncle Fu smiled and said, Old Master said before that there are many experts in the God realm who study the array path. Many of them have studied it for a longer time than Old Master. However, it is because they went astray when they first comprehended the first level of the array path. Even if they are heavenly gifted and spend a long time to comprehend the second level of the array path, it is impossible for them to comprehend the third level. Qin Yu nodded his head slightly. The old master continued to study it. However, no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to comprehend the fourth stage of the array path. However, the old master said with certainty that he could sense the existence of the fourth stage of the array path. Unfortunately, he was unable to reach it. Uncle Fu sighed. Che-Ho Yuan did not have any relatives. He only had a servant, Uncle Fu. The helplessness in his heart could only be told to Uncle Fu. Qin Yu could only sigh. The fourth stage of the array path. What level was it? I think I understand now. The more formations one deduces, the greater the understanding one has of the array formation ocean and the more accurate the essence of the array formation one has comprehended. Am I right? Qin Yu completely understood. He had merely comprehended the contents of the 900 scrolls of the array path. The essence of the array path that he had comprehended had already gone astray. The main reason was that there were too few examples of formations. Uncle Fu nodded his head. Then I shall start deducing. I shall deduce one profound and complicated formation array after another. I believe that the more I deduce, the more accurate the first stage of the array path will be. Qin Yu directly abandoned the essence of the array path that he had just comprehended. Instead, he began to deduce. When Uncle Fu saw this, a smile appeared on his face. While Qin Yu was deducing, he suddenly thought of a question. The craftsman god Cheho Yuan said that there was a fourth stage of the array path. However, he was unable to reach it. Could it be because the second time he spent 1 billion years researching the essence of the array path was still not the most accurate? As Qin Yu thought of this, his heart trembled. 1 billion years was not enough. Qin Yu did not dare to think about it anymore. If the truth was like this, then how much time would he have to spend to deduce such a complicated formation array? Abandoning his wild thoughts, Qin Yu began to deduce the formation array with a wholehearted heart. Mining only lasted 1,000 years. Thus, only 100,000 years had passed in the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm. When Qin Yu was woken up by Uncle Fu, he sighed. How could mining only last 1,000 years? Researching formation arrays was indeed a very time-consuming process. After 10,000 years of deduction, as he continued to deduce, Qin Yu began to realize more and more how vast and boundless the ocean of formation arrays was. At the same time, he began to feel even more ashamed of the essence of the array path that he had comprehended in the past. The higher one stood, the more one would be able to understand how vast and boundless the world was. Qin Yu was exactly like this. The more he comprehended, the more he felt that the ocean of formation arrays was boundless. Inside the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm, Hou Fei and Kuro were waiting outside the house. As for Qin Yu, he had yet to come out from the house. Fei, Xiaohei, the two of you wait outside for a moment. This was what Hou Fei and Kuro had heard when they arrived outside of Qin Yu's house. After that, the two of them began to wait outside. However, it had already been a long time. What's Big Brother doing inside the house? Hou Fei asked in confusion. Kuro also shook his head to indicate that he did not know. In 100,000 years, Hou Fei and Kuro's soul had already reached the mid-level deity level. To be exact, they had spent over 90,000 years to reach the mid-level deity level. Back then, when Qin Yu had first discovered this, he had been shocked for a long time. Although the cloud-piercing spear and black stick allowed Hou Fei and Kuro to comprehend the spatial laws more easily, but a short 100,000 years had still surpassed Qin Yu's expectations. Only after carefully asking did he find out. In the past 100,000 years, Hou Fei and Kuro's method of comprehending the spatial laws was fighting. The two of them fought frantically and comprehended the Tao in the midst of battle. Hou Fei and Kuro had originally comprehended the heaven-startling single-stick strike through battle. Now that they were comprehending it through battle, their speed of comprehension was extremely fast. Hou Fei and Kuro were outside. As for Qin Yu, he was sitting cross-legged on a praying mat. When the time limit of 100,000 years was reached, Qin Yu stopped deducing the formation arrays. After that, Qin Yu went to the stellar space to inspect it. After 100,000 years, exactly what level had his stellar space reached? In the stellar space. The present stellar space was extremely vast. Wisps of flower paste aura came from all directions. They passed through the membrane between the stellar space and the flower paste space and gathered towards the origin in the middle. The origin, the core of Qin Yu's cultivation, had shrunk in size. In the past, it was the size of a fist, but now, it was only the size of an egg. Furthermore, it was no longer dark gold. Instead, it was completely gray. Or rather, it was close to the color of the flower paste in the flower paste space. The late-stage origin. It reached the late-stage origin realm 20,000 years ago. Over the past 20,000 years, it has only shrunk slightly. Qin Yu's consciousness observed in puzzlement. Qin Yu didn't stop the origin from evolving. He allowed it to develop naturally. 20,000 years ago, Qin Yu had already observed the origin. Back then, he had already reached the late-stage origin realm. But what was the difference after 20,000 years? Its size has shrunk slightly. Also, its color is closer to the color of the flower paste. Qin Yu's heart suddenly jolted. Qin Yu had discovered something strange. The egg-sized gray sphere had a very small space around it that was distorted. A rotating distorted space? Qin Yu had completely noticed this distorted space. Because the flower paste aura was absorbed in a rotating manner, Qin Yu didn't notice the distorted space at first. Qin Yu carefully observed. Gradually, Qin Yu's consciousness completely fused with the stellar space. The stellar space was something Qin Yu had refined. It wasn't difficult for it to fuse with the entire stellar space. Once it fused with the stellar space, Qin Yu could clearly sense the changes in the entire stellar space. With the origin as the center, the small rotating distorted space was gradually increasing in size at an imperceptible speed. Qin Yu only noticed this change when he fused with the stellar space. Could it be that this distorted rotating space will eventually occupy the entire stellar space? Qin Yu thought to himself. Currently, Qin Yu's comprehension of the spatial laws was not very high. However, he had a vague understanding. This vague understanding told Qin Yu that the current changes in the stellar space should be following the most perfect path. If he were to forcefully change it, he would only cause it to deviate from the correct path of evolution. After his consciousness returned to his body, Qin Yu opened his eyes and stood up. After pushing open the door, Qin Yu walked out with a smile on his face. He immediately saw the green lawn outside the house that was filled with vitality and the lake water that was as tranquil as a mirror. His mood was extremely good. "Fei Xiaohei, I've made you two wait for a while," Qin Yu said with a smile. Ho Fei laughed out loud and said, "It's fine. Big brother, let's go. We're finally able to leave the divine spiritual stone mine. Quickly, let's go." Qin Yu and his brothers didn't want to go too far. According to their plan, before they reached the level of heavenly deity, the three of them would follow the rules like outsiders. During this period of time, Qin Yu and his brothers would use the Jianglan's realm's second space to increase their strength. Qin Yu and his brothers each paid 3,600 low-quality divine spiritual stones and were then led to an elegant pavilion by a woman. There were also several beautiful women in this elegant pavilion. Qin Yu, Ho Fei, Kuro. A purple-clothed woman took out a jade slip. She read through it with her divine awareness and then raised her head to look at it. She then said indifferently, "Amen, you all have already paid enough divine spiritual stones in the past 1,000 years. From today on, you all are official members of the divine realm. Please wait a moment, our people have already gone to retrieve your identity title plates." After she finished saying that purple-clothed woman completely ignored Qin Yu and his brothers. Qin Yu and his brothers could only smile helplessly at each other. After paying the low-quality divine spiritual stones time and time again, they already knew about the cold attitude of these service staff. "Big Sister Li, I've heard that the Mines Company Captain Wang wants to become your Dao companion, right? Company Captain Wang's conditions are pretty good. At the very least, he is a company captain. His salary is very high. He also has a house in Yuchi City that is used for cultivation." A white-clothed woman who was arranging the jade slips said with a smile. That purple-clothed woman from earlier said coldly, "I am not interested in that for the time being. Big Sister Li, don't always bitterly cultivate to become a heavenly deity. Among the many high-level deities, how many are able to become a heavenly deity? The probability of becoming a heavenly deity is too low. You cannot always be by yourself. It is also not bad to accept Company Captain Wang. Company Captain Wang ascended from the same cosmic space as you, right? He has already chased after you for several 100 million years." That white-clothed woman urged. The purple-clothed woman said coldly, "Dao companion? It is not impossible for us to become his Dao companion." "How is it possible?" That white-clothed woman's eyes immediately shined. The purple-clothed woman still had a cold expression. Unless he becomes a heavenly deity. Immediately, that white-clothed woman grew silent. If one were to become a heavenly deity, there would be a lot of people who would want to become a heavenly deity's wife. That was because when Tao companions dual cultivate, their souls would fuse. Thus, they would use the other party's comprehension to reach the heavenly deity realm. Of course, using the comprehension of the other party would only lower the difficulty of becoming a heavenly deity. It was not 100% success rate. Qin Yu and his brothers took a glance at each other. They could only remain silent. At this moment, a woman walked in from outside the house. She handed 3 title plates to the purple-clothed woman. Big Sister Li, these are 3 identity title plates. The village that the 3 of them will be assigned to has also been determined. It is the Seal Field village. The purple-clothed woman received the 3 title plates. Then, she looked to the woman who handed the title plates to her with a puzzled expression. What did you say? The 3 of them will be assigned to the Seal Field village? Are you certain? Chapter 504. That's right, it's the Seal Field village, said the woman who handed over the title plates with absolute certainty. The purple-clothed woman nodded. She then handed the 3 title plates to Qin Yu and his brothers. These 3 title plates must be bound by blood. You must not lose them. As for the Seal Field village that you are going to... The purple-clothed woman frowned as she took a glance at the 3 of them. Did you all not give any divine spiritual stones to the people distributing the village? Qin Yu's heart moved. He still remembered that when he met with Song Hui and Shi Tian, the Shi Tian couple had asked Qin Yu and them to bribe the people distributing the village. However, Qin Yu and his brothers did not care about it at all. Now, it would appear that this Seal Field village ought to be an extremely poor village. That's right. What's wrong? Is this village located very far away from Yuchi City and unable to absorb the berserk divine spiritual aura? Qin Yu asked with a smile. You knew? The purple-clothed woman looked to Qin Yu in shock. You knew, yet you still deliberately did that? Seeing that the young man before her was still smiling indifferently even in such a situation, the purple-clothed woman was instead shocked. Immediately after, the purple-clothed woman regained her cold and detached expression. The Seal Field village is not only located in a remote area and unable to absorb the divine spiritual aura. There's something even worse. Qin Yu and the other 2 were unable to refrain themselves from raising their brows. Seeing the reaction of the 3 of them, the purple-clothed woman instead felt a burst of comfort. Without giving Qin Yu and his brothers the opportunity to ask, she said, Gao Xiaoqi, quickly come in. There are 3 newly ascended people here that need to be arranged into the Seal Field village. This mission will be handed to you. A golden-haired youth wearing battle armor walked in. With a frown on his face, he looked to the purple-clothed woman. You said Seal Field village? That's right. What's wrong? You're not willing? The purple-clothed woman looked to this Gao Xiaoqi. Gao Xiaoqi snorted coldly. I'm not that scared. If you have the ability, then don't change the appearance of the army's standard battle armor. In the room, the white-clothed woman who was arranging the jade slips laughed. This Gao Xiaoqi ignored her. Instead, he looked to Qin Yu and his brothers. The 3 of you, follow me. Qin Yu and the other 2 followed Gao Xiaoqi out of the mine. Just as they left the mine, they saw a shocking scene. The standard armor on Gao Xiaoqi's body began to change. In the end, it turned into a long robe that covered his body. Qin Yu and the other 2 recalled what the white-clothed woman had said before they left. If you have the ability, don't change the appearance of the army's standard armor. Brother Gao, why did you change into this standard armor? Qin Yu asked. Gao Xiaoqi glanced at Qin Yu and asked, Are the 3 of you newcomers who have just ascended 1,000 years ago? Yes, what's wrong? Qin Yu asked in confusion. Ho Fei and Kuro also stared at Gao Xiaoqi. As for Gao Xiaoqi, he looked at Qin Yu in disbelief for a long time. It's nothing. However, in just a short 1,000 years, the two of them managed to reach the mid-level deity stage. As for you, I am unable to see through you at all. I estimate that you have reached the high-level deity stage. How could this be? It had only been 1,000 years. Could it be that you all ascended from the heavenly heart realm? Ascended from the heavenly heart realm. Qin Yu and the other two were all puzzled. Gao Xiaoqi sighed. There are some differences between the cosmic spaces of the same level in the lower realms. For example, the Green Demon realm, only one ascended every 100 million years. As for the stronger heavenly heart realm, one ascended every several hundred years. Qin Yu and his brothers glanced at each other. In the cosmic spaces, the mortal realm was one level. The immortal, devil and demon realm, dinosaur realm and other cosmic spaces were also one level. The divine realm was another level. There were many cosmic spaces of the same level as the immortal, devil and demon realm. However, even if they were of the same level, there were still differences in strength. For one to ascend every several hundred years, the frequency was indeed very high. In the immortal, devil and demon realm, including the dark star realm, only one ascended every million years. Some of the extremely powerful experts of the heavenly heart realm were mid-level deities after ascending to the divine realm 1,000 years ago. I saw that the three of you were so powerful. That's why I thought that you all were from the heavenly heart realm, said Gao Xiaoqi with a smile. Qin Yu lightly smiled and said, there are many cosmic spaces of the lower realms. Some of the people with fast cultivation speed might not necessarily be from the heavenly heart realm. Hey, Brother Gao, why did you change the appearance of your battle armor? Ho Fei asked. Qin Yu and Kuro also looked to Gao Xiaoqi. This was also what they were puzzled about. Gao Xiaoqi looked to Qin Yu and his brothers and said helplessly, could it be that the three of you don't know that the allocation of ascenders to the village is a very important matter? You all should have paid a bit of compensation for your hard work. That way, you wouldn't have been assigned to remote villages, such as this Seal Feel village. So what if it's Seal Feel village? What does it have to do with you changing the appearance of your battle armor? Ho Fei continued to ask. Gao Xiaoqi swallowed his saliva and said, you all must be careful. For a village like this Seal Feel village that is located in the most remote region, not only would they have to pay taxes to the city master's mansion every 1,000 years, they would also have to pay taxes to the leaders of some powerful powers. Leaders of powerful powers. Qin Yu and his brothers glanced at each other. They are the mountain kings, said Gao Xiaoqi clearly. Think about it, Yuqi City is only able to accommodate 20 million people. There are still 200 million people outside. The people outside have a much more difficult life. As for the Ascenders, which one of them wasn't a formidable person in their original cosmic space? Thus, many of them came to the desolate regions and occupied the mountains as kings. Kuro started to frown. Ho Fei blurted out, fuck, aren't they bandits? Qin Yu was very understanding. If the ascended experts were always at the bottom, it was normal for them to rebel. Does the city master's mansion not care? Qin Yu asked. Gao Xiaoqi sneered and said, city master's mansion? The city master's mansion would only occasionally put on a show. As long as those powers do not affect the rule of the city master's mansion, the city master's mansion would not care about them. Furthermore, the cities in the divine realm are fixed. There are too many people in the divine realm. The city master's mansion is disinclined to care about them killing each other. It's not easy to occupy a mountain as kings. The villages are also filled with deities. If those people who occupy a mountain as kings force the villagers too much, wouldn't the villagers retaliate? Qin Yu said. Gao Xiaoqi sighed and said, you all are mistaken. While there are many people who occupy a mountain as kings, the powers that dare to make the villages pay taxes regularly are all major powers. Ordinary small powers would not dare to do such a thing. Major powers? How big are they? Qin Yu frowned. Gao Xiaoqi sighed. There are 3 major powers outside of Yuqi City. If the city master's mansion were to be ruthless, they would indeed be able to eliminate these three major powers. However, the City Master's mansion is unable to do so. That's because, in order to eliminate these three major powers, at the very least, several tens of heavenly deities would have to die. Say, do you think that the City Master's mansion with only 100+ heavenly deities would be willing to pay such an enormous price? Qin Yu and his brothers were all shocked. In order to eliminate these three major powers, several tens of heavenly deities would have to die? As far as I know, the Sealfield village is under the control of one of the three major powers, the Black Dragon Pool. As for the leader of the Black Dragon Pool, he is a super expert ranked in the top 5 within the Yuchi city. Gao Xiaoqi sighed and said. Immediately, Qin Yu and his brothers no longer had any thoughts of resisting. Why would a super expert ranked in the top 5 within the Yuchi city become the leader of a major power? You all also understand why I had to change the appearance of the standard battle armor, right? Although the Black Dragon Pool would not truly become enemies with the City Master's mansion, they are fond of bullying nobodies like us the most. As for you ordinary people, at the very most, they would rob you and not harm your lives. Gao Xiaoqi said helplessly. Led by Gao Xiaoqi, Qin Yu and his brothers walked for 3 entire days and nights from the divine spiritual stone mine before finally arriving at the remote Sealfield village. At the same time, Qin Yu also learned about the matters within the Yuchi city. The closer one was to the Yuchi city, the safer one would be. As for the areas that were relatively far away from the Yuchi city, they would be under the control of the various major bandits. These bandits that had occupied the mountains and declared themselves kings also possessed different statuses. For example, the three major powers like the Black Dragon Pool dared to collect taxes from the various large villages in remote areas. Thus, they would naturally live the most comfortable lives. As for some of the smaller powers, they would rely on robbing and slaughtering. For a remote village like the Sealfield village, not only would they have to pay taxes to the City Master's mansion, they would also have to pay taxes to the Black Dragon Pool. The Sealfield village occupied an extremely vast area. With a rough glance, one could see that there were at least several thousand houses. Qin Yu and his brothers nodded in their hearts. At the very least, this Sealfield village was not too desolate. The population of the Sealfield village is over 10,000. It can be considered a small village. Large villages all have several 100,000 people. Gao Xiaoqi gasped in admiration. Qin Yu immediately understood. There were 200 million people outside of the Yuchi city. With 200 million people, it was normal for a village to have over 10,000 people. This is the village chief's home. There are many things that the village chief will tell you all about. Gao Xiaoqi walked to a courtyard in a very familiar manner. The entrance to the courtyard was wide open. There were 3 middle-aged men chatting and laughing within the courtyard. Gao Xiaoqi walked in and said to the tallest middle-aged man, "Village Chief Fan Su, you should have already received the notice. These are the 3 newly arranged ascenders. From today on, they will be members of your Sealfield village." Fan Su was at least 2 meters tall. He had a tall stature and had a very gentle and quiet appearance. Holding a feather fan in his hand, Fan Su walked toward Qin Yu and his brothers with a smile on his face. "I am the village chief of the Sealfield village, Fan Su. You all should be Qin Yu, Ho Fei and Kuro, right? These are some of the things that you must pay attention to in the village. I have already prepared them for you all." As he said that, Fan Su handed over a jade slip. Qin Yu received the jade slip. "Village Chief Fan Su, I am Qin Yu. This is my second brother, Ho Fei. This is my third brother, Ho Fei." Qin Yu swept through the jade slip with his consciousness. He then cupped his hands and said, "Village Chief, us 3 brothers will not disturb you any longer. Farewell. Brother Gao Xiaoqi, thank you for escorting us here. Farewell." Qin Yu and his brothers straightforwardly left. After seeing that I have to pay taxes twice on the jade slip, he was not surprised at all. He just left so straightforwardly. Strange. Fan Su fanned himself with his feather fan. He then looked at Gao Xiaoqi. Yes, I have already told them on the way here. Gao Xiaoqi said with a smile. Village Chief Fan Su, I will also take my leave. Fan Su nodded. He then turned and walked toward his two friends. He muttered, 3 brothers? 3 brothers ascending at the same time. That is rare. After reading that jade slip, Qin Yu came to know about some important matters. The taxes would be paid once every 1,000 years. The city lord would have to pay 1,000 low-grade divine spiritual stones every 1,000 years. As for the Black Dragon Pool, they would have to pay 1,500 low-grade divine spiritual stones every 1,000 years. There were 3 main ways for ordinary people to earn low-grade divine spiritual stones. First, they could go to the divine spiritual stone mines like ascenders. After 1,000 years, other than the amount of divine spiritual stones they had to pay, there would be a lot left. Second, they could go to the abandoned mines to find divine spiritual stones. If they were lucky, they would be able to find them. The third method was work. Work for the city lord's mansion. Work for people with power and influence. There were many different kinds of work. Their salaries were all paid with divine spiritual stones. Of course, other than these 3 methods, there were also some other things. For example, they could go to the abandoned areas to search for rare materials, precious medicinal herbs, ores, and so on. They could be sold in the city. Merely, this sort of work was relatively dangerous. Finding precious medicinal herbs and materials also required one's keen eyesight. It was not something that ordinary people could accomplish. Just like that, Qin Yu and his brothers peacefully settled down in the Seal Field village. The 3 of them easily built a manor. Usually, there would be many people from the Seal Field village coming over to greet them. Qin Yu and his brothers spent the majority of their time in the Jianglan's realm. However, they would occasionally come out every day. Thus, they knew many people from the village. Soon, 300 years had passed. Qin Yu and his brothers passed their days very peacefully. And today, the day of tax payment had arrived. The tax payment this time was to be paid to the Black Dragon Pool. The tax payment day of the Black Dragon Pool was different from the tax payment day of the City Lord's mansion. All of the people in the Seal Field village had gathered in front of the village chief's residence. No one dared to not pay the tax of the Black Dragon Pool. If they did not pay the tax to the City Lord's mansion, the City Lord's mansion would only punish them. However, the people of the Black Dragon Pool would directly kill those who did not pay the tax. Brother Li Liao, how is it? The 2 men walking side by side began to chat. Xing Yuan, I am truly at my wit's end. Ziyun's parents are too stubborn. Although you and Ziyun are affectionate and righteous, her parents insist on you being able to buy a house in Yuqi City in order to marry their daughter to you. Li Liao said helplessly. Xing Yuan heaved a long sigh. This Xing Yuan was precisely the previous Gold Punishment Lord of the Dark Star Realm. The Gold Punishment Lord of the Dark Star Realm was merely an ordinary person in the Divine Realm. He did not bribe the people in charge of allocating the village. Thus, he was also allocated to this place. When they were in the mine, the frequency that Qin Yu and his brothers came out was too low. Thus, they did not encounter Xing Yuan. 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. Even if you kill me, you won't have them. Xing Yuan tightly clenched his fists. He was extremely angry. In all those years in the Dark Star Realm, he did not have any feelings for Ziyun. Thus, when he arrived in the Divine Realm, he did not even think about this aspect. He only wanted to bitterly train. However, after he met Ziyun, this man and woman became completely hot-headed and entered into a state of madness. Ziyun grew up in the Divine Realm. Thus, her parents' views were deeply rooted. They wanted their daughter to live a good life in the future and not have to worry and be afraid in the Seal Field village. They were determined to have Xing Yuan buy a house in Yuqi City before coming back to talk about it. Xing Yuan, don't be too stubborn. We men should properly train. When the day comes when we become heavenly deities, wouldn't the number of women that want to marry you break through the threshold? Li Liao consoled. However, Li Liao also knew how difficult it was to become a heavenly deity. Xing Yuan sighed. Brother Li Liao, you do not understand my frame of mind. Once one was immersed in feelings, one would not be able to extricate oneself. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded. Brother Xing Yuan? Xing Yuan raised his head and looked over. He saw 3 youths walking over together. Xing Yuan immediately recognized the smile and temperament of the leading man. He said in astonishment, Lu Xing, it's you. You've also arrived in the divine realm? Chapter 505. At the moment when Qin Yu saw Xing Yuan, his heart was filled with astonishment. There were so many villages outside of Yuqi City. Who would have thought that they would actually be placed together? Furthermore, in the past 300 years, he had not encountered them even once in the village. Qin Yu understood that it was mainly because he had not come out often enough. The majority of his time was spent in the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm studying the array path. Xing Yuan, you also know Qin Yu and his brothers? Li Liao said in surprise. Qin Yu and his brothers all knew Li Liao. Li Liao was the type of person who would become familiar with anyone. He would be able to talk a lot with anyone. Qin Yu. Xing Yuan was slightly surprised. Qin Yu smiled and said, Brother Xing Yuan, I actually have 2 names. When I was in the immortal realm, devil realm and demon realm, I called myself Qin Yu. And when I was in the dark star realm, I was called Lu Xing. In the future, you can just call me Qin Yu. So that's the case. Xing Yuan nodded. Even now, Xing Yuan had never doubted Qin Yu's identity. He had thought that Qin Yu had only come up with this name because he was adventuring in the immortal realm, devil realm and other places. Brother Xing Yuan, let me introduce you. This is my second brother Ho Fei. This is my third brother Kuro. When Qin Yu saw Xing Yuan, his mood couldn't help but become very good. Ho Fei and Kuro both smiled and bowed. Xing Yuan also squeezed out a smile and bowed. When Qin Yu saw Xing Yuan earlier, he already felt that Xing Yuan had some sort of difficulty. At this moment, he felt it even more. Immediately he asked, Brother Xing Yuan, I can see that you seem to have something on your mind. Xing Yuan, look. Li Liao suddenly said. At the same time, he pointed to the distance. In the distance, a middle-aged couple was walking toward the village chief's house with a purple-clothed woman. Xing Yuan's gaze was immediately locked onto that purple-clothed woman. He was unable to look away for a long time. Big brother, this Xing Yuan has taken a fancy to that girl. Ho Fei giggled beside Qin Yu. Qin Yu and Kuro also smiled. Brother Xing Yuan, I never would have thought that after ascending to the divine realm for such a short period of time, our Dark Star Realm's Gold Punishment Lord already has a woman he loves. I must congratulate you on this matter. Ha ha. Qin Yu joked. Contrary to Qin Yu's expectations, Xing Yuan heaved a long sigh. Gold Punishment Lord? In the God Realm, any status in the lower realms is useless. Qin Yu nodded in understanding. Among the experts of the God Realm, there are those who grew up in the God Realm, and there are also those who ascended from the lower realms. Cosmic spaces like the immortal, devil and demon realm numbered in the tens of thousands. The status of the lower realm is indeed nothing. However, Brother Xing Yuan, you like that woman. Why did you sigh? Qin Yu asked curiously. Beside him, Li Liao also shook his head. Xing Yuan shook his head and sighed. I'm ashamed. Speaking of which, this happened on the first day I arrived at Sealfield Village. At that time, I already encountered. Ziyun and I are both willing. However, her parents requested it. You should also know of my difficulties. Xing Yuan's face was filled with bitterness. Qin Yu, Ho Fei and Kuro glanced at each other. The Grand Gold Punishment Lord of the Dark Star Realm was actually distressed to such an extent because of 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. Xing Yuan, leave this matter to me. Qin Yu directly said via divine awareness voice transmission. Hearing the voice in his mind, Xing Yuan looked to Qin Yu in shock. In the divine realm, if one wanted to use divine awareness voice transmission, one must at least be able to separate one's divine awareness from one's body. However, only mid-level deities could separate one's divine awareness from one's body. Qin Yu had ascended after him. It had only been over 1,000 years. How did Qin Yu become a mid-level deity? Xing Yuan simply did not know that Qin Yu's soul was not a mid-level deity. Instead, it was a high-level deity. Xing Yuan, don't be surprised. It's a house in Yuqi City. Very well, after we finish paying the taxes, I'll accompany you to Yuqi City to buy a house. What do you think? Qin Yu continued to speak via divine awareness voice transmission. Xing Yuan was unable to speak via divine awareness voice transmission. Thus, he could only nod his head gratefully. Merely, Xing Yuan was also puzzled. Why would Lu Xing, Qin Yu, be able to take out such a huge sum of 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones? At this moment, no less than 10,000 people were gathered outside of the Sealfield Village's village chief's courtyard. Who would dare to not come when the people of the Black Dragon Pool were collecting taxes? When Qin Yu and the others arrived, they discovered that there were 30 men wearing battle armor standing at the very front. The leader of the group was a young man who was coldly looking at the surrounding people. Everyone, just like in the past, all those who have passed the divine tribulation will have to pay taxes. 1,500 low-quality divine spiritual stones per person for 1,000 years. Come one at a time, that young man said with a clear voice. Immediately, the residents of the Sealfield village walked forward one by one. Once a person paid the taxes, that young man collected them with a flip of his hand. Storage divine artifact. Seeing this scene, Qin Yu couldn't help but be shocked. A subordinate of the Black Dragon Pool actually possesses a storage divine artifact. The Black Dragon Pool is truly powerful. Qin Yu didn't know that although the Black Dragon Pool possessed enormous power, they did not possess a lot of storage divine artifacts. Only those people were qualified to use them temporarily during the time of collecting taxes. After using them, they would still have to be turned over. Big brother, look. Ho Fei pulled Qin Yu's shoulder. Qin Yu followed the direction that Ho Fei was pointing at. Qin Yu saw that Ziyun and Xing Yuan were intimately together. Qin Yu couldn't help but smile. One by one, they went up to pay the taxes. Ziyun and Xing Yuan also went up to pay the taxes one after another. Little sister Ziyun. Upon seeing Ziyun, a smile emerged on that young man's face. You haven't forgotten about your big brother Qian, right? Ziyun was wearing a purple gauze gown. Her black hair was like ink as it poured down. She was indeed a beauty with a very elegant temperament. Ziyun lightly smiled and said, How could I forget about Big Brother Qian? I never expected that in a short million years, Big Brother Qian would be able to reach such a level in the Black Dragon Pool. Little Yun, there's no need for you to pay the taxes. Lu Qian said with a chuckle. Xing Yuan, who stood beside Ziyun, frowned. Lu Qian took a glance at Xing Yuan and smiled. Little Yun, who is this low-level deity? Is he a new servant that your family has hired? Servant? Xing Yuan and Ziyun's expressions slightly changed. Little Yun, the reason why I came to the Sealfield village this time around is to collect taxes. The other reason is to propose marriage to your parents. We are childhood sweethearts and grew up together in the divine realm. Now that I have some accomplishments, I believe that you will not refuse me, right? Lu Qian completely ignored Xing Yuan's existence when he spoke. Ziyun's parents walked over from behind. They had smiles on their faces and appeared very approachable. The gazes with which they looked to their daughter Ziyun were also filled with pampering. Qian, to have my Ziyun suffer in the Black Dragon Pool with you, that is unacceptable. Ziyun's mother said. Lu Qian promptly said, Auntie, you have watched me grow up. You also know of my feelings for little Yun. Tell me, would I let little Yun suffer? I have managed to endure all these years in the Black Dragon Pool. I have just purchased a house in the eastern district of Yuqi City. In the future, I will let little Yun enjoy life there. Ziyun's mother's eyes immediately shined. Ziyun's father also lightly nodded his head. Lu Qian immediately turned his gaze to Ziyun. No. Ziyun promptly said. Lu Qian did not say anything. Instead, he looked to Ziyun's mother. Sure enough. Ziyun's mother frowned and reprimanded. Little Yun, your big brother Qian grew up together with you. Could it be that all those years of relationship are still inferior to the relationship between you and this Xing Yuan? You have just ascended from the lower realm. Instead of working hard to bitterly train, you are instead talking about love. What sort of accomplishments would someone like you have in the future? Xing Yuan was choked by those words. Auntie, little Yun might have been deceived by the honeyed words of others. To be able to deceive little Yun like this right after ascending to the upper realm, a man like him who lives off a woman is truly powerful in his honeyed words. Little Yun cannot be blamed. Lu Qian said with a sincere expression. Ziyun was so angry that her complexion turned deathly pale. As for Xing Yuan, he coldly looked to Lu Qian. Little Yun, this man is only a low-level deity. How could he possibly protect you? Anyone in the divine realm would be able to easily trample on him. A man like him is not worthy of you acting like this. Lu Qian urged. Not long ago, I reached the level of high-level deity. Although high-level deities do not amount to much in the divine realm, they still possess the power to protect themselves. Furthermore, behind me is a heavenly deity expert from the Black Dragon Pool. At the very least, within the Yuchi city, there would not be anyone who would dare to bully the people of our Black Dragon Pool. Lu Qian's tone was very gentle. However, the disdain toward Xing Yuan in his words was something that anyone could tell. The residents of Sealfield Village also began to discuss this matter. The majority of them instead agreed with Lu Qian and felt that Ziyun should be with Lu Qian. However, the number of people that supported Xing Yuan was extremely small. As for Qin Yu and his brothers, they were watching from the side. Xing Yuan tightly clenched his fists. His knuckles had turned white. However, could he resist? His opponent was a high-level deity. Furthermore, he also had a small team of subordinates. The majority of them were mid-level deities. What could he, a low-level deity that had just ascended, possibly do? A bandit from the Black Dragon Pool actually dares to boast like this. It's as if being a bandit is something glorious. Who? Lu Qian's expression changed. He immediately looked toward the direction of the voice. Qin Yu smiled. Ho Fei and Kuro followed beside Qin Yu. Just like that, the three of them walked over. What's wrong? Could it be that what I said was wrong? You, a mere bandit from the Black Dragon Pool, actually dared to be this arrogant. Truly. As Qin Yu spoke, he shook his head and sighed. Lu Qian looked to Qin Yu with a frown. Who are you? I grew up in the Sealfield Village. I know practically everyone in the Sealfield Village. Where did you come from? Lu Qian was able to sense that Qin Yu's strength was not inferior to his own. Thus, he became more cautious and not as disdainful as he was toward Xing Yuan. Ascender. Qin Yu smiled. A deity that had only ascended 1,000 years ago. What's wrong? Little Yun, follow me home. Ziyun's mother suddenly frowned and said. Qin Yu immediately bowed to Ziyun's mother and said, Aunt, I am Xing Yuan's good friend. A few days ago, Brother Xing Yuan had found a precious medicinal herb in the desolate region. Its name is white feela grass. I have some connections in Yuchi City and had just sold this white feela grass for 3 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. As for these 3 million low-quality divine spiritual stones, I have yet to give them to Brother Xing Yuan. With a flip of his hand, a pouch appeared in Qin Yu's hand out of thin air. Storage divine tool? Seeing this scene, Ziyun's parents, Lu Qian and a large group of people all opened their eyes wide. Lu Qian was even more shocked. A high-level deity that had only ascended 1,000 years ago? Storage divine tool? Yuchi City even has channels to buy and sell medicinal herbs? Exactly what sort of background does this guy have? He, Lu Qian, was merely a small fry in the Black Dragon Pool. He knew that Lord Black Dragon of the Black Dragon Pool would not take care of people with power for a small fry like him. Brother Xing Yuan, why are you in a daze? Since you gave me the white Fila grass, I naturally have to pay for it after selling it. There are a total of 300 high-quality divine spiritual stones in this pouch. You must count them properly. Qin Yu urged. Xing Yuan also woke up. He immediately said, Brother Qin Yu, thank you very much. I am merely astonished that this white Fila grass was sold for such a high price. As he said that, he extended his hand and received the pouch. After opening it and looking at it, no matter how calm Xing Yuan was, his hands were still trembling slightly. Brother Xing Yuan, let me see. Ziyun was incomparably excited. She immediately opened the pouch to look. The reason why her parents did not agree to her being together with Xing Yuan was because of the matter regarding the house. Xing Yuan raised his head and looked to Qin Yu and his brothers with excitement. However, he only saw Qin Yu and his brothers winking at him. Chapter 506. To have to pay taxes once every 1,000 years, what sort of benefit would there be in paying taxes? In the past, Qin Yu was unable to understand. However, he now understood. At the very least, there was a perfectly maintained official road. Furthermore, there were troops stationed along the road. This would ensure that no bandits would come to rob them on the road. Little brother Qin Yu, I have walked this road countless times in my life. However, this time around, I am the happiest. Ha ha. Ziyun's father, Zi Futian, said while laughing. At this moment, Xing Yuan said respectfully, Lord Father, how much longer until we reach Yuqi City? Hearing that, Qin Yu and his brothers started laughing. Fuck, you're not even married, yet you're already calling us Lord Father. Not bad. Ho Fei patted Xing Yuan's shoulder and joked. Zi Futian laughed and said, Sealfield Village is too far away from Yuqi City. I reckon we'll still need 2 more days to reach there. On the road, Ziyun was chatting with her mother and did not say much to Xing Yuan. After 2 days, Qin Yu and the others finally saw Yuqi City in the distance. When they saw Yuqi City, it was as if they were seeing an enormous ferocious beast that had been coiling there the entire time. That ancient aura caused Qin Yu's heart to completely calm down. Uncle Z, do you know how long this Yuqi City has existed for? Qin Yu suddenly asked curiously. Zi Futian smiled and said, Is there even a need to ask? The history of Yuqi City is as long as the history of the Divine Realm. It has existed for almost 102 quadrillion years. It's truly long. Qin Yu sighed. The various great cities of the Divine Realm have existed since time immemorial and have never been destroyed before. Furthermore, the divine spiritual energy within the cities is tranquil and gentle. One can easily absorb and refine it. As for why these cities are so peculiar, that is a secret that no one knows even now. Zi Futian sighed and said. Qin Yu, Ho Fei, Kuro and the others all nodded. However, Qin Yu had another opinion in his heart. I'm afraid that it's not that no one knows about this secret. Rather, it's that the people who knew about it did not spread it. Lord Father, can you tell us more about the God Realm? We know too little about the God Realm, Xing Tian said humbly. Qin Yu and the other 2 were also looking at Zi Futian. Haha, I'm just an ordinary person in the God Realm. How much would I know about the God Realm? I only know a little about the eastern region of the God World. Zi Futian slowly began to speak. Of the 8 great sage emperors of the Divine Realm, the utmost East Sage Emperor's sphere of influence is located in the eastern part of the Divine Realm. As for the utmost East Sage Emperor himself, he lives on top of Mount Dazzling Gold. Mount Dazzling Gold. Qin Yu and the others were shocked. They had no idea about this at all. You all know how special the space in the God Realm is. Flying in the God Realm is a luxury, unless he reached the heavenly God stage. And for a lifeless object to float off the ground was even more unimaginable. However, Mount Dazzling Gold is a floating mountain. Zi Futian said solemnly. A floating mountain, Mount Dazzling Gold? The residence of the utmost East Sage Emperor? Qin Yu remembered it in his heart. The utmost East Sage Emperor possesses a total of 64 cities. These 64 cities are of similar sizes. As for the core of the eastern region of the Divine Realm, it is Mount Dazzling Gold. Of course, it is impossible for us ordinary people to go to Mount Dazzling Gold. Zi Futian laughed and said, after talking about Mount Dazzling Gold, let's talk about Yuqi City. Yuqi City was not called Yuqi City a very long time ago. The reason why it is called Yuqi City now is because the city master of Yuqi City is Lord Yuqi. The number one clan in Yuqi City is the Yuqi clan. Yuqi City's lord is also the number one expert in the entire Yuqi City. Number one expert? How powerful is he? Qin Yu asked. Big brother Qin Yu, Yuqi City's lord is extremely powerful. Even that Lord Black Dragon of the Black Dragon Pool is no match for Yuqi City's lord. That Zi Yun also walked over and said with a smile. Qin Yu nodded to Zi Yun. Zi Yun, do you know what level of expert Lord Yuqi is? It seems to be a high-level heavenly deity. Soon after, she nodded and said with certainty. However, the Yuqi City's city master is very powerful. No one in the entire Yuqi City is a match for him. Zi Futian smiled faintly and said, the leader of the Black Dragon Pool, Lord Black Dragon, can be considered powerful. However, he was different from City Lord Yuqi. Back then, City Lord Yuqi had followed the utmost East Sage Emperor and fought all over the world. You had made great contributions. In the end, the utmost East Sage Emperor bestowed the city to City Lord Yuqi. Fighting in the north and south? There are large-scale battles in the God Realm? Qin Yu was slightly surprised. Of course. Zi Futian said with a smile. As long as one has lived in the Divine Realm for several billion years, they would know that in the Divine Realm, every 6 billion years, the various great powers of the Divine Realm would fight and kill each other. That fight was so tragic. Zi Futian sighed. Every 6 billion years, a war would break out across the entire Divine Realm? The Yuqi City's city master is a great character that could move about unhindered in the Divine Realm. Many heavenly deities have died under his hands. How could he be compared to someone like the Black Dragon Pool's Black Dragon? Zi Futian sighed. In Zi Futian's heart, the leader of the Black Dragon Pool was simply incomparable to the Yuqi City's city master. Come, let's enter the city. At this moment, Qin Yu and the others had already arrived at the city gate. The soldiers at the city gate inspected their identity plates and collected the entrance fee. Only then did they allow Qin Yu and the others to enter the city. After entering the Yuqi City, Qin Yu and the others were able to clearly sense the tranquility and docility of the divine spiritual energy. It was simply incomparably easy for them to absorb and refine the divine spiritual energy. In the Yuqi City, Qin Yu and the others directly proceeded toward the city master's mansion and the house sales office. All of the houses in the Yuqi City were controlled by the city master's mansion. Thus, when purchasing a house, one would naturally have to go to the same place. This was the first time that Qin Yu had come to the Yuqi City. Seeing the various buildings in the Yuqi City, Qin Yu had no choice but to admit that the overall layout of the Yuqi City was truly pretty good. It was arranged in picturesque disorder and was not messy in the slightest. Auction stores, medicine stores, weapon stores, leisure tea houses, stone carving stores, all kinds of stores appeared before their eyes. Qin Yu discovered that there were actually a lot of places to enjoy and relax in the Divine Realm. Move aside. Following a loud shout, a group of at least several hundred people were running on the street in an orderly manner. In the sky above this group of people was a man wearing a golden standardized battle armor. He was flying with his hands behind his back. It's a heavenly deity. Zi Yun pointed to the man in the sky in pleasant surprise. Qin Yu and the others also raised their heads to look. That man might be one of the division commanders or legion commanders of the Yuqi City's army. Zi Futian said to Qin Yu and the others. In the Yuqi City, 10 people form a small squad, 100 people form a medium squad and 1,000 people form a large squad. 10,000 people form a division and 100,000 people form a legion. In order to become a legion commander, one must first reach the heavenly deity level. As for the division commanders, they do not have this requirement. However, among the division commanders of the Yuchi city, there are many heavenly deity level experts. Zi Fuqian had lived for several billion years. Thus, he clearly knew a lot more things than the others. The house sales office is right ahead. Let's go and buy a house, Qin Yu said. Just like that, the group of people entered the city lord's mansion's house sales office. The house sales office was a very large 2-story building. When Qin Yu and the others entered the house sales office, there were still many people there. There was only a single attendant in the entire house sales office. It was a yellow-clothed woman. There is a jade slip over there. The information about all of the vacant houses is inside. You all can look at it yourselves. If you find a house that you like, just tell me. The yellow-clothed woman did not even bother to take a glance at Qin Yu and the others. Big brother, this woman's attitude is truly bad. Ho Fei said to Qin Yu via divine awareness voice transmission. Qin Yu nodded and smiled. There's nothing we can do about it. All of the houses in the Yuchi city belong to the Yuchi city's city lord alone. Since her attitude is bad, there's nothing we can do about it. We can only endure it. Qin Yu thought of a matter. For the #1 artifact crafting expert like the craftsman god, Che Ho Yuan, even if he was arrogant toward the various major powers would still have to endure it. Wasn't this the same principle? At the moment when Qin Yu and his brothers were chatting, Xing Yuan, Ziyun and the others went to check out the available vacant houses using the jade slips. After a lively discussion, Xing Yuan, Ziyun and the others finally decided. Xing Yuan walked toward the yellow-clothed woman and said with a smile. We have already decided. It is the house number 8793-043 in the Yuchi city's North District. There are only 13 houses left in the North District. This house is the best among them. You all truly have good eyesight. That yellow-clothed woman lightly smiled and said. You can pay the fee now. The total is 28 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. Xing Yuan and Ziyun glanced at each other. With smiles on their faces, they took out 228 high-quality divine spiritual stones. That yellow-clothed woman received the 228 high-quality divine spiritual stones and nodded her head. Then, she flipped her hand and took out a hexagonal key. At the same time, she also took out a jade slip. However, right at this moment, Xiao Yan, a voice rang out, and a man in golden armor walked in. It's that heavenly deity from earlier. Ho Fei said to Qin Yu via voice transmission. Qin Yu nodded his head. He naturally remembered that heavenly deity from earlier. However, Qin Yu noticed another person. Right after that golden-armored man walked in, a white-clothed youngster walked in from behind him. That youngster is an expert, a heavenly deity-level expert. Qin Yu was able to clearly sense the aura of that white-clothed youngster. After that white-clothed youngster walked in, he walked to the side and picked up a jade slip. He began to check the situation of the houses in Yuchi City. As for the golden-armored man, he walked over to the yellow-clothed woman. Legion Commander Lu, what's the matter? That yellow-clothed woman immediately smiled brilliantly. She completely ignored Xing Yuan and Ziyun. This Legion Commander Lu nodded his head and said, I remember that there is a house in the northern district next to the empty Eagle Pavilion. I want that house. Remember it. Yes, Legion Commander Lu. That yellow-clothed woman immediately said. Ziyun quietly said to Xing Yuan. Big brother Xing Yuan, among the 13 houses in the northern district, only our house is next to the empty Eagle Pavilion, right? Xing Yuan was also startled awake. He hurriedly said to the yellow-clothed woman, Young lady, we have already purchased that house. We have already given you the 228 high-quality divine spiritual stones. Amen. The golden-armored man frowned. Little Yen, what's going on? That yellow-clothed woman by the name of Little Yen smiled and said, "It's nothing." As she spoke, the yellow-clothed man looked at Xing Yuan. "This house is taken by Lord Legion Commander. As of now, I did not record it nor did I give you the key. That house is not yours yet." As she spoke, the yellow-clothed woman placed the 228 high-quality divine spiritual stones on the table. "You two keep these high-quality divine spiritual stones first and change to another house," the yellow-clothed woman straightforwardly said. Ziyun and Xing Yuan glanced at each other. They then looked at that Lord God of Heaven. They were furious in their hearts. However, what can they do? Fight over a house with a God of Heaven? This God of Heaven. Qin Yu frowned but did not interfere. On the other hand, Qin Yu's gaze suddenly shifted to the white-clothed youth who had been looking at the jade strip. "Northern District? I want all the 13 empty houses in the Northern District." The white-clothed youth raised his head and said with a smile, "Silence." Not only Xing Yuan, Ziyun and company, the yellow-clothed woman, Legion Commander Lu and the other people who were looking at the houses all looked at the white-clothed youth. Qin Yu and his two brothers also looked at the white-clothed youth with interest. "You are?" Legion Commander Lu looked to the white-clothed youth with a frown. Only now did he discover that there was actually such a super expert behind him. That white-clothed youth lightly smiled. With a flip of his hand, he took out a golden title plate. "I am Mount Dazzling Gold's large group captain, Huang Jing. I have brought my subordinates to Yuchi City. I might be staying here for a relatively long period of time. These 13 houses are barely enough for us to live in." Mount Dazzling Gold's cultivator. Legion Commander Lu's expression took a huge change. The yellow-clothed woman's expression also took a huge change. Mount Dazzling Gold's large group captain? Legion Commander Lu felt a burst of pressure on his chest. Immediately, he squeezed out a smile and said respectfully, "So it's Senior Huang Jing." Lord City Master had already ordered this junior to receive Senior. Never would I have expected that Senior would arrive so early. This junior has already made arrangements beside the City Master's mansion. No need. It's the Northern District's 13 houses. You merely need to inform Uncle Yuchi. What's wrong? Is there a problem? The white-clothed youth by the name of Huang Jing looked to Legion Commander Lu. No problem. Legion Commander Lu said straightforwardly, "Uncle Z, how powerful is this Huang Jing? Does the large group captain of Mount Dazzling Gold possess a very high status?" Qin Yu asked Zi Futian via Divine Awareness voice transmission. Zi Futian was currently looking at Huang Jing with a fiery gaze. At this moment, he replied via Divine Awareness voice transmission. In the eastern region of the Divine Realm, more than half of the heavenly deities are on Mount Dazzling Gold. There are about 10,000 people. The weakest cultivators on Mount Dazzling Gold are low-level heavenly deities. The cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold possess special privileges to begin with. Yet, this Huang Jing is actually a large group captain of Mount Dazzling Gold. Qin Yu looked to this quiet white-clothed youth. Exactly how powerful was this white-clothed youth? Qin Yu did not dare to be certain. Chapter 507. The entire Mount Dazzling Gold has around 10,000 people. According to a company consisting of 1,000 people, this Huang Jing is the company captain of Mount Dazzling Gold. He should be one of the higher-ups of Mount Dazzling Gold, Qin Yu thought to himself. Qin Yu didn't know that the highest position in the army of cultivators on Mount Dazzling Gold was the large captain. As for this Yuchi City's Legion commander, he merely possessed the strength of a low-level heavenly deity. It was simply impossible for him to compare with the great captain of Mount Dazzling Gold. "Then give me the key." Huang Jing smiled as she looked at the yellow-clothed woman. The yellow-clothed woman immediately flipped her hand and produced 13 keys. "Lord Huang Jing, these are the keys to the 13 houses in the Northern District." The yellow-clothed woman's attitude was incomparably respectful. Huang Jing waved a hand and received the 13 keys. Senior Huang Jing. That Legion Commander Lu had a radiant smile on his face. Senior Huang Jing, I wonder how many cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold have you brought with you this time? Will the 13 rooms in the North District be enough? Huang Jing smiled warmly. It should be enough for them to share a room. How can this be? How many people are squeezing together? There's no need to say more. Huang Jing directly interrupted Legion Commander Lu. Return and tell Uncle Yuqi that I have arrived. At the same time, tell Uncle Yuqi that I am not to allow others to disturb me while I am in Yuqi City. Yes. Legion Commander Lu replied respectfully. Huang Jing nodded. With a move of her feet, she disappeared from everyone's sight. In the lobby on the first floor of the sales office, a group of people looked at the place where Huang Jing had disappeared and remained silent for a while. Even if I use the divine spear Waning Snow, I don't have the slightest chance of winning against this person. Qin Yu was extremely certain in his heart. For this man to be able to become a large captain of Mount Dazzling Gold, is he a mid-level heavenly deity or a high-level heavenly deity? Ho Fei and Kuro were also silent for a while. Legion Commander Lu frowned slightly. Then, he no longer mentioned the matter of buying a house and quickly left the sales office. Mount Dazzling Gold. Xing Yuan was still thinking about this word in his heart. If one day, I can become a cultivator of Mount Dazzling Gold. Xing Yuan recalled the disdain of that Lu Qian, as well as the imposing manner of Huang Jing, just now. Xing Yuan looked at Ziyun who was beside him and his conviction to bitterly cultivate became even more firm. Soon after, Xing Yuan and Ziyun chose a house in the southern district of Yuqi City. This house was a bit cheaper. It only required 1.98 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. After purchasing the house and receiving the key, Qin Yu and his group left. 9 Crane Tower. The 9 Crane Restaurant was a very famous restaurant in Yuqi City. Xing Yuan and Ziyun had just purchased a house and decided to go to the 9 Crane Restaurant to splurge. Qin Yu and his 2 brothers naturally followed along. Qin Yu, his brothers, Xing Yuan and Ziyun's family have a total of 7 people. The 7 of them just happened to fill up a table. Let's be extravagant this time. Ziyun wrinkled her nose and fiercely ordered a few dishes. Most of the dishes in the 9 Crane Restaurant were delicious. Many of the cooking methods originated from different universes, and the ingredients were also very strange. He ordered 16 dishes in one go, and the price reached over 800 low-grade divine spiritual stones. Your mother and I only came here once to spend extravagantly when we got married. Never would I have expected that after so many years, little Yun, you would also have a family. Zi Futian said with a smile. Ziyun smiled happily. She even looked at Xing Yuan. Xing Yuan was also smiling. Brother Xing Yuan, I might leave the Sealfield village in a period of time and will no longer be in Yuqi City. Today, I will accompany you and drink for a while. Qin Yu said with a smile. You're leaving? Xing Yuan said in shock. Ho Fei laughed mischievously and said, when I have time in the future, I will still come and see you. He, amen? Ho Fei only said half of his words when his gaze turned toward the staircase. Qin Yu and the others also followed Ho Fei's gaze and looked toward the staircase. A series of footsteps could be heard. A group of people walked out from the staircase. The person leading them was precisely Huang Jing. The footsteps were unceasing. One after another, over 30 people walked up the staircase. They are all cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold. Qin Yu determined in his heart. All of these 30-plus people were heavenly deity-level experts. Because of the arrival of this group of people, the entire restaurant grew quiet for a long time. Even though they did not deliberately reveal their strength, the arrival of 30-plus heavenly deities had already shocked the overwhelming majority of the people in the restaurant. Great Captain, you can sit here. Those heavenly deities quickly sat at 5 tables. As for the white-clothed youngster Huang Jing, when he saw Qin Yu, his eyes shined. Amen, we are quite fated. The white-clothed youngster, Huang Jing, said to Qin Yu with a smile. Those 30-plus cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold couldn't help but look at Qin Yu. Indeed, we are quite fated. Qin Yu lightly nodded. The white-clothed youngster, Huang Jing, said no more and directly returned to his seat. The people at these 5 tables also ordered some dishes. The arrival of this group of people instead caused Xing Yuan, Ziyun and the others to be unable to eat peacefully. "Great Captain, how long are we going to stay this time?" "It's better that we stay a bit shorter and return earlier." While eating, a Mount Dazzling Gold cultivator spoke. "A bit shorter? Even if I'm willing, that younger brother of mine might not be," said Huang Jing with a light smile. Huang Jing appeared to be a very gentle and quiet youngster. Even his smile and actions were similar to that of a woman. However, those 30-plus cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold did not dare to be impudent before him. "Little young master is too powerful. If we were to go, we would only be trampled upon. Great Captain, you should accompany little young master. After all, he is not a match for you," a female cultivator of Mount Dazzling Gold said. Huang Jing shook his head and said, "My younger brother is unwilling to fight with me. Otherwise, why would I have brought you all here? But little young master—" "Fine, I will try my best to shorten the time this time, you guys." Huang Jing shook his head helplessly. "All of you, quiet down." A clear and cold voice suddenly resounded throughout the entire restaurant, and the voices of everyone in the restaurant abruptly stopped. Huang Jing and the 30-plus cultivators all looked towards the source of the voice. Truly a gutsy person. Ho Fei, Kuro and the others also looked towards the source of the voice excitedly. The person who spoke was a gray-clothed man who was sitting at a table in the corner of the restaurant. The gray-clothed man had stubble and looked slightly dispirited. Just by looking at this gray-clothed man, one's heart would naturally be filled with sadness. An expert. Qin Yu was also unable to be certain. "Hey, who are you? Are we disturbing you by talking here?" A robust cultivator of Mount Dazzling Gold stood up and shouted with a loud voice. "Everyone, let's continue chatting. Ignore that madman." That robust man sat down. He did not care about the gray-clothed man in the slightest. Immediately, those 30-plus cultivators continued chatting. As cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold, there were not many people in the eastern region of the Divine Realm that dared to forbid them from talking. At the very least, they had met those few major characters before. Huang Jing frowned and took a few glances at that man. "Quiet down." That gray-clothed man slightly raised his head and said coldly, "This is a restaurant, not your Mount Dazzling Gold. You all are guests. The others are also guests. Don't be too excessive." The 30-plus cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold were all angered. However, Huang Jing stood up. "You know that we are from Mount Dazzling Gold. Judging by your strength, you are also a mid-level heavenly deity. However, you are not from Mount Dazzling Gold. In that case, which of the 64 cities are you from?" That gray-clothed man continued to drink. He completely ignored Huang Jing. Qin Yu had been watching everything the entire time. "Big brother." Ho Fei's voice sounded in Qin Yu's mind. Qin Yu looked to Ho Fei. Ho Fei's complexion was a bit pale. He said via voice transmission, "Big brother, I keep having this feeling that gray-clothed man is looking at me." Qin Yu turned around to look at the gray-clothed man. The gray-clothed man was currently drinking with his head lowered. "But he's not looking at you." Qin Yu frowned. Ho Fei's complexion grew even paler. "No, I am able to sense that he is looking at me. Furthermore, he is using his aura to oppress me." As he said that, beads of sweat appeared on Ho Fei's forehead. Aura. Qin Yu was unable to sense any aura in the surroundings at all. He couldn't help but look to Ho Fei in confusion. He then looked to the gray-clothed man. Huang Jing stood there and looked to the gray-clothed man. She was frowning. As for those 30-plus cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold, they were quietly waiting for Huang Jing to give the order. Because of this, the entire restaurant had grown quiet. Huff, the wine is pretty good. The gray-clothed man raised his head and finished drinking. He then stood up and cast his gaze toward Huang Jing and them. He sighed and shook his head. Fuck, a mere mid-level heavenly deity dares to be this arrogant. That loud-voiced man suddenly rushed out and directly charged toward the gray-clothed man. Huang Jing did not stop him. That was because she also felt that it was strange. Qin Yu and them immediately retreated to a corner. Chi. With the body of this loud-voiced man as the center, countless rays of golden light shot out. Like Buddhist threads, the golden light actually formed an enormous cocoon. The entire cocoon had also wrapped around the gray-clothed man. Qin Yu and them were unable to see what was happening within the golden cocoon at all. Bang! The golden cocoon suddenly shattered, and the man with a loud voice spat out a mouthful of blood. He was sent flying back. As for the gray-clothed man, he was still standing there. It was as if he had not attacked at all. Little girl, did you know that I hate noise the most? The gray-clothed man cast his gaze toward Huang Jing. Little girl. Qin Yu also looked to Huang Jing in surprise. Even though Huang Jing was gentle and quiet, his voice was still a man's voice. You. Huang Jing opened her eyes wide. She had an expression of disbelief. Today, I have also come here for an important matter. Originally, my mood was very good. However, I was unable to drink my wine in peace. Thus, I thought that I should punish you all. The gray-clothed man lightly smiled. Only the buzzing sound of the air vibrating could be heard. Stillness. Regardless of whether it was Huang Jing, the seriously injured loud-voiced man, or the other cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold, all of them were completely motionless. These 30-plus people were completely motionless, as if they were frozen in ice. That loud-voiced man's mouth was still open. However, no matter what, he was unable to close his mouth. The 30-plus cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold were all shocked. Huang Jing, a genius of Mount Dazzling Gold. Her strength had reached the high-level heavenly deity level. A super expert like her actually did not even have the chance to resist when faced with this gray-clothed man. Crack chi. The sound of glass shattering sounded. Cracks actually appeared in the space surrounding Huang Jing. Black spatial cracks. Dazzling golden light circulated through Huang Jing's body. The number of black spatial cracks grew more and more numerous. At the same time, the width of the spatial cracks also grew larger and larger. Little girl, you have some strength and perseverance. The gray-clothed man lightly nodded. However, do not resist anymore. Right after he finished saying those words, all of the spatial cracks disappeared. Huang Jing returned to her original stillness. Everything was useless. Huang Jing looked to the gray-clothed man with a pleading gaze. Evidently, Huang Jing also knew that she had kicked an iron plate. I'm in a good mood today. I'll spare you all. The gray-clothed man lightly smiled. Immediately, the bodies of Huang Jing and the other 30-plus cultivators trembled. Everyone regained their ability to move. However, everyone's gazes towards the gray-clothed man were filled with shock. This junior was disrespectful this time. Thank you, senior, for your magnanimity. Let's go. Huang Jing's voice was actually very clear and sweet. Clearly, it was a woman's voice. The 30-plus cultivators did not dare to speak any nonsense. They immediately followed Huang Jing and quickly left the restaurant. At this moment, other than Qin Yu and his brothers, the rest of the people in the restaurant had all disappeared. Even Xing Yuan, Ziyun and the rest had fled downstairs. Qin Yu felt extremely helpless. Why is that gray-clothed man blocking us? It wasn't that Qin Yu and the rest did not want to escape. Earlier, they saw that the gray-clothed man had caused Huang Jing and the rest to be in a state of stillness. Qin Yu and the rest felt that something was amiss. Everyone ran downstairs. Ziyun and the rest ran downstairs. However, Qin Yu and his brothers were unable to go downstairs. It was as if something was blocking them. You three little fellows, don't be anxious. The gray-clothed man smiled as he looked at Qin Yu and his brothers. The reason I've come this time is to find you three. May I know why Senior is looking for us three brothers? Qin Yu bowed and said, You all came from the immortal, devil and demon realm, right? The gray-clothed man said with a smile. Precisely. Qin Yu replied. The gray-clothed man lightly nodded. I don't know if you all still remember. The immortal, devil and demon realms ape and monkey clans inherited Holy Land had a saying, Anyone who managed to master the heaven-startling single-stick strike before ascending to the divine realm would be my disciple. Qin Yu and Ho Fei glanced at each other. They were shocked as they looked at the gray-clothed man in front of them. You are the senior that left behind the inherited Holy Land? Ho Fei said with a stammer. That's right. Ho Fei, I already know about everything that happened in the immortal, devil and demon realm. You are a disciple of my ape and monkey clan. Furthermore, you have also mastered the heaven-startling single-stick strike. I will naturally keep my promise. From today on, you are my disciple. Prepare yourself and follow me immediately. The gray-clothed man said indifferently. Qin Yu and his brothers were all confused. Take in a disciple? Follow this gray-clothed man? But I already have a master. Ho Fei hurriedly said. You have a master? How come I don't know who your master is? The gray-clothed man said with a frown. It's Uncle Lon. Oh, Zhang Lon. My master is called Zhang Lon. Ho Fei hurriedly said. Chapter 508. Zhang Lon. The gray-clothed man slightly frowned and muttered a couple times. Qin Yu and his brothers glanced at each other. They then continued to look at this mysterious gray-clothed man. This gray-clothed man's strength had completely shocked them. Before this gray-clothed man, it was simply impossible for them to escape. You are Zhang Lan's disciple? The gray-clothed man frowned as he looked to Ho Fei. You cannot lie. Upon hearing this, Ho Fei heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. It would appear that his master's great name was still very useful. That's right. My master is Zhang Lon. I already have a master. Thus, I cannot take another master. You also cannot bring me away. Ho Fei said repeatedly. Ho Fei did not wish to be separated from his brothers. Qin Yu and Kuro could only remain silent. Ha, little monkey, don't try to be crafty. Regardless of whether you are Zhang Lan's disciple or not, I will still bring you away. Even if you are his disciple, you do not even know the slightest bit of his abilities. What sort of master and disciple is this? I will help Zhang Lon discipline you. I believe that he will also not say anything. The gray-clothed man revealed a smile. Ho Fei's expression immediately turned bitter. Ho Fei indeed did not know the slightest bit of Uncle Lan's abilities. At this moment, Qin Yu grew anxious. He immediately said, Senior, Ho Fei is my brother. The three of us have ascended to the divine realm together. Senior, could it be that you must separate us three brothers? The gray-clothed man smiled. There is no such thing as perfection in this world. Ever since this Ho Fei mastered the heaven-startling single-stick strike, he has become my master and disciple. Well then, when this little monkey succeeds in his training, I will have him come back to see you. As he said that, the gray-clothed man waved his hand. Ho Fei's body was fixed in place. Ho Fei's eyes were rolling around. He was glaring angrily at the gray-clothed man. However, no matter what, Ho Fei was unable to say a single word. He could only use his eyes to resist. What a fierce temperament. I like it. The gray-robed man smiled and walked towards the window of the restaurant. Ho Fei's body involuntarily floated behind the gray-clothed man. Qin Yu and Kuro wanted to give chase, but there seemed to be a transparent barrier in front of them. Senior, if we want to find Ho Fei, where can we find him? Qin Yu quickly asked. At this moment, the gray-clothed man had already flown out of the window. Ho Fei also followed behind the gray-clothed man and involuntarily flew up. The gray-clothed man turned around and smiled. "If you want to find Ho Fei, go to the Azure Sea." After saying that, the gray-robed man's body turned into a stream of light and flew straight into the sky. Ho Fei followed behind him. The two spots of light reached the horizon and then disappeared. "Azure Sea, Azure Sea?" Qin Yu muttered. Kuro said aloud, "Big brother, the invisible obstacles around us have completely disappeared. Big brother, don't think too much. The gray-clothed man is much stronger than us. If he wants to kill us, he can kill us with a thought. Moreover, he is so familiar with the forbidden inheritance area of the ape and monkey clan. He should be an ancestor of the ape and monkey clan. He definitely won't hurt the monkeys." Qin Yu also nodded. How could Qin Yu not understand this point? More than 30 Divine Realm experts couldn't even move in front of the gray-clothed man. How could such a person deceive them with such strength? Judging from the man's tone, he obviously knows Uncle Lon. Qin Yu sighed regretfully. "I was so focused on Fei that I forgot to ask the senior if he knows where Uncle Lon is. Big brother, don't think too much. Let's leave the restaurant first." Kuro immediately followed Qin Yu out of the restaurant. Just as they walked down the stairs to the street outside, Qin Yu and Kuro saw Xing Yuan, Ziyun and Ziyun's parents waiting for them on the street. "Qin Yu, what happened just now? Where's Ho Fei? Did anything happen to him?" Xing Yuan anxiously asked. Xing Yuan was at the front of the restaurant. Earlier, the gray-clothed man and Ho Fei flew out of the back window. Xing Yuan didn't see the gray-clothed man and Ho Fei flying away. Qin Yu comforted. "It's nothing. That's one of Ho Fei's seniors. He's looking for him for an important matter." "Then I'm relieved." Xing Yuan smiled in shame. "Qin Yu, earlier, when we went downstairs, we discovered that you two had not come down. Thus, we were worried that something might have happened to you too. Merely, that person's strength was too strong. Thus, we did not dare to go upstairs. I hope that you don't mind." Qin Yu smiled carelessly. "This cannot be blamed on you. Brother Xing Yuan, there's one thing that I must tell you. Kuro and I will not be returning to the Seal Field village. In the future, you also do not have to go and find us. If there's anything, we will come and find you. I know the address of your new home. Not returning? You're going to buy a house?" Xing Yuan asked in confusion. Kuro, who stood beside Qin Yu, said, "No, we're going outside the city." "Occupying a mountain and declaring yourself king?" Xing Yuan guessed with a low voice. Qin Yu shook his head and said with a smile, "Not occupying a mountain and declaring myself king. I merely want to find a quiet place to train. Originally, I had only entered the Seal Field village for the sake of familiarizing myself with the general situation of the Divine Realm. As of now, Qin Yu could be said to have a complete understanding of the matters within the sphere of influence of the Yuchi city. Oh, in that case, when the two of you train outside, be careful not to be discovered by bandits," Xing Yuan advised. Qin Yu and Kuro lightly smiled. In the Zhonglan's realm, how could those bandits discover them? After bidding farewell to Xing Yuan and his family, Qin Yu and Kuro left the Yuchi city's eastern city gate and proceeded eastward along the official road. After going east for 1,000 miles, the official road split into several forks. As for Qin Yu and Kuro, they proceeded onward along one of the forks. After proceeding halfway and seeing that there was no one around, Qin Yu and Kuro disappeared from the road. In the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm, Uncle Fu. Qin Yu directly called for Uncle Fu. "Master, what's the matter?" said Uncle Fu as he slightly bowed. Qin Yu asked, "Uncle Fu, I've been in the Divine Realm for so long. Although I know of the 8 great sage emperors, I do not know of the other god kings. Today, I encountered an expert. He should be a god king. He came from the Azure Sea. Can you tell me where the Azure Sea is?" "Azure Sea?" said Uncle Fu in surprise. Kuro stood beside Qin Yu and quietly listened. Uncle Fu, you know about the Azure Sea? Qin Yu was secretly delighted. Uncle Fu, it's best that you quickly tell me what you know. Uncle Fu said helplessly. Master, the old master had once instructed me that when the new master's strength is weak, it's best that we do not go and provoke the major powers. It's best that we do not even know about them. Qin Yu shook his head and smiled. Cheho Yuan was truly considerate. However, since master has asked, I'll tell you. Uncle Fu said respectfully. The entire divine realm is mainly divided into two camps. One is the native forces of the divine realm and the other is the ascenders of the lower realm. Oh! Qin Yu's eyes lit up. The native forces of the divine realm are the natives of the divine realm. Uncle Fu nodded. The 8 most deeply rooted forces of the divine realm are the 8 great sage emperors. They are the native forces of the divine realm. They have been in existence since the day the divine realm was born. Qin Yu nodded slightly. Other than these 8 forces, over the countless years, more and more ascenders gathered in the lower realm. There were also some heroic figures that appeared. In the end, 3 forces that belonged to the ascenders of the lower realm were born. Uncle Fu said slowly. These 3 forces are the Azure Sea, Mount Blood Demon and Dual Domain Island. Azure Sea, Mount Blood Demon and Dual Domain Island. Qin Yu couldn't help but engrave these 3 words in his mind. Uncle Fu continued, back then, the old master had also evaluated that the Azure Sea, Mount Blood Demon and Dual Domain Island, these 3 forces were comparable to one of the 8 great sage emperors. Qin Yu completely understood. Up until now, the forces that belonged to the ascenders of the lower realm were still much weaker. There were only 3 forces that belonged to the ascenders of the lower realm while there were 8 native forces. Obviously, they weren't on the same level. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. The 8 great sage emperors are deeply rooted and have been passed down for 120 trillion years. It's already very impressive that these 3 forces could develop to the same level as them. However, the Azure Sea, Mount Blood Demon and Dual Domain Island. The old master had once said that the Azure Sea was the strongest among the 3 forces. Uncle Fu said solemnly. Qin Yu couldn't help but be surprised. Master, do you still remember the simplified map of the divine realm? Uncle Fu smiled. Qin Yu nodded. The divine realm is mainly a huge piece of land. In the center of this land, there is an inland sea. And in the periphery of this land, there is a boundless ocean. Speaking of this, a scene appeared in Qin Yu's mind. A round cake floats on a river. In the middle of the round cake, there is a hole. The round cake is the land of the divine realm, the hole is the inland sea, and the river floating on the round cake is the boundless ocean. Yes, the inland sea has another name. It is called the Azure Sea. Uncle Fu said with a smile. Qin Yu was shocked. The inland sea is the Azure Sea? Qin Yu didn't expect the Azure Sea to be the inland sea. He thought it was a large lake. The inland sea of the divine realm was very big. Just the surface area alone was about 1/8 of the land of the divine realm. The 8 great sage emperors of the divine realm are located in the east, south, west, north, southeast, southwest, northwest and northeast regions. And in the center is the Azure Sea. As for Mount Blood Demon, it is located between the North Pole Sage Emperor and the Northwest Sage Emperor. And the last one, Dual Domain Island, is located on an island in the boundless ocean outside the land of the divine realm. Uncle Fu said the geographical locations of the 11 major forces of the divine realm in one breath. Qin Yu's mind clearly pictured the various major forces. Thinking of what Uncle Fu said, the Azure Sea was actually the strongest of the 3 major forces, he calmed down a little. Someone actually dared to occupy the inland sea in the center of the divine realm and named it the Azure Sea. It seems like the Azure Sea is very powerful. Faye should be able to benefit from being there. Chapter 509. Qin Yu and Kuro continued to stay in the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm and did not return to the Sealfield village at all. Originally, Qin Yu had only entered the Sealfield village to familiarize himself with the general environment of the divine realm. However, now that Qin Yu was preparing to undergo a deep level of bitter training, how could he possibly care about anything else? Every day, many people would go missing in the divine realm. This was merely a small matter. In the future, if one wished to return to the life of an ordinary person, one merely needed to spend some divine spiritual stones to pay the Yuchi City's city master's mansion. In the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm, there were 5 people sitting together eating and drinking. These 5 people were precisely Qin Yu, Kuro, Uncle Fu, Wu Lan and an extremely tall and dark-skinned man. Wu Lan, how much longer until your divine tribulation descends? Qin Yu asked with a smile on his face. My divine tribulation? I'm not sure. Even now, I have not sensed it, said Wu Lan helplessly. Although he had not followed Qin Yu to the divine realm for a long time, he had stayed in the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm the entire time. In reality, it could be said that he had already spent over 100,000 years in the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm. Being unable to sense the divine tribulation even after being a level 9 demon emperor for over 100,000 years, Wu Lan felt extremely helpless. Brother Wu Lan, do not worry. When the time comes, I, old Wu, will accompany you to undergo the divine tribulation. That tall and dark-skinned man laughed loudly and said, Master's Zhonglan's realm is still the best. It's like another world. In here, I do not have the slightest restriction. I can actually take a human form. This is truly delightful. Wu Lan lightly smiled and said, The divine realm's demonic beasts are restricted in the divine realm. Before passing the divine tribulation, they are unable to take a human form. However, the divine realm's demonic beasts are all able to take a human form in the lower realms. It is the same in the Zhonglan's realm. Qin Yu understood this very well. Back then, he had saved over 80 pets. When they were in the pet cage, they were still in their original forms. However, when they were released, they were all able to take a human form. If I were to appear in the divine realm now, I would have to take the form of a black stain ant. Wu shook his head helplessly. This was also the reason why he had not left the Zhonglan's realm for so many years. The underground's cave's dragon was unable to take a human form in the divine realm. In the divine realm, the underground's dragon was restricted and was unable to take a human form. In the realm, the underground was restricted to take a human form. To was his was. After eating and drinking, Wu He, Wu Lan, the two of you should cultivate in peace. Xiao He and I also need to cultivate, said Qin Yu. Yes, said Wu He and Wu Lan respectfully. After that, the two of them left side by side. Wu He and Wu Lan had a very good relationship. Among the monstrous beasts of the divine realm, the subterranean cave dragon and the black blur ant were both emperors among the monstrous beasts. The subterranean cave dragon had an advantage in individual combat strength. On the other hand, the black blur ant had the advantage of being able to control an ant tide that covered the sky. Compared to the subterranean cave dragon, the people of the heavenly realm were more afraid of the ant tide. Seeing the two of them leave, Qin Yu said to Kuro, Xiao He, since Fei has left, there is no one to spar with you. Follow Uncle Fu to the Bewitching God Temple and look at the cultivation method books left behind in the Bewitching God Temple. There are many books that describe fighting methods in the Bewitching God Temple. They might be beneficial to you. I don't have an opponent. No, there is one. Kuro shook his head with a faint smile. Oh. Qin Yu looked to Qin Yu in surprise. There are not many people in the Zhonglan's realm. Who could be your opponent? Uncle Fu. Kuro turned around and looked to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu's speed is even faster than heavenly deities. His attacks are also extremely sharp. Sparring with him would definitely be of great help to me. As for Uncle Fu, he looked to Qin Yu. Qin Yu naturally knew of Uncle Fu's strength. Uncle Fu's speed was extremely fast and his attacks were extremely straightforward. With the current Kuroa's strength, he was simply no match for Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu, what do you think? Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu smiled and said, I do not have much comprehension toward the spatial laws. However, my old master had once taught me a set of fighting methods that relied purely on speed and power. I think that it would be sufficient for me to spar with His Highness Kuro. I will also act appropriately. That's good. Qin Yu pondered for a moment and then agreed. Xiao Hei, if you feel lonely and bored, then go and trample on Wu He, Wu Lan and them. Trample on them. Kuro's grave and stern face also displayed a smile. Kuro, who had reached the mid-level deity level and had completely refined the Grand Mist spiritual treasure Snowthread gloves, possessed an attack power that was much greater than before. Last time when he fought against Wu He in the divine spiritual stone mine, Kuro was only a low-level deity. Relying on his cloud-piercing spear and Grand Mist spiritual treasure, he was able to injure Wu He. And now, Kuro, whose strength had increased by 10 times, was able to pierce through Wu He with a single spear strike. If it's all right, I will go and trample on them, Kuro said with a trace of a joking smile. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. In the following days, Qin Yu began to peacefully cultivate in his room. He wholeheartedly immersed himself in the deductions of the array path. Killing array, trapping array, defensive array, all of the various array paths were divided into many different categories. Every single category had its own branch categories. Unceasingly deducing, it was as if 1 gave birth to 2, 2 gave birth to 4, 4 gave birth to 8. Just like that, the deductions were endless. Qin Yu's deduction speed was extremely fast. One array path after another automatically appeared in his mind. At the same time, the symbols of the array paths of various attributes were also changing. In an instant, tens of millions of talismans disappeared and appeared. And from the outside, Qin Yu appeared to be sitting there cross-legged the entire time. Delightful, delightful. Qin Yu abruptly opened his eyes. His face was filled with smiles. Just earlier, Qin Yu had finally succeeded in deducing a complicated trapping array that he had deduced for an entire 3,000 years. This feeling of unceasing research, unceasing effort, and finally succeeding made Qin Yu feel a sense of conquest. It was as if he was conquering one peak after another. At the same time, Qin Yu also felt Uncle Fu's strength in the array path. Back then, when Uncle Fu had set up the killing array for him to see, he was only barely able to see through it after reaching his current level of strength. As for the true principles behind it, he was completely clueless. Every time he conquered a difficult problem, Qin Yu would take a short break. Is it right for me to wholeheartedly immerse myself in researching the array path? Qin Yu suddenly frowned. He began to doubt himself. After coming to the divine realm for so many years, Qin Yu had practically spent all of his energy on the array path. If I want to straighten my back in Li Er's family, there are only 2 ways for me to do so. The first is to reach the divine king realm. The second is to become a character like the craftsman god. Qin Yu was very clear about his own advantages. His advantages were the tears of Lu Xing, left behind by Zhuoqiumei, the bewitching god temple left behind by the craftsman god Che Ho Yuan, and the large amount of array path scrolls. There were also some experiences left behind by Che Ho Yuan. If he were to comprehend the spatial comprehension left behind by Zhuoqiumei, how long would it take for him to reach the divine king realm? Qin Yu pondered for a long time. The answer was, he didn't know how many years it would take. That was because last time, Qin Yu had spent 3,000 years to reach the peak of the mid-level deity level from the initial Jindan. According to Qin Yu's estimation, he reckoned that he would be able to reach the peak of the high-level deity level after spending 10,000 years to comprehend the spatial comprehension. However, to reach the heavenly deity level from the deity level was a threshold. Qin Yu reckoned that it would take him several tens of thousands of years to reach the threshold. As for the low-level heavenly deity, mid-level heavenly deity and high-level heavenly deity levels, each one more difficult than the last, the amount of time required to reach the high-level heavenly deity level would definitely be 10 times longer than the last. Qin Yu believed that it would take him at least 10 million years to reach the high-level heavenly deity level. That would be the most fortunate situation. In the history of the divine realm, was there anyone that reached the high-level heavenly deity level in merely 10 million years? In the divine realm, all of the high-level heavenly deities were people that could call the wind and summon the rain. All of them had to go through all kinds of difficulties and painstakingly train for a very long time to reach the high-level heavenly deity level. However, this was still not the most difficult. The most difficult was reaching the God King level from the high-level heavenly deity level. The number of God Kings in the divine realm was extremely small. The 8 great sage emperors were all God King experts. As for the 8 great sage emperors, they were people that had existed for countless hundreds of millions of years. Would one be able to reach the God King level merely by relying on the comprehension left behind by Lu Xing's tear? Qin Yu did not believe that to be the case. If it was that easy to reach the God King level, then there wouldn't be so few God King experts in the divine realm. From Qin Yu's point of view, even if one possessed the comprehension left behind by Zhuo Qiumei, without sufficient time, sufficient experience and that trace of luck, it would be very difficult for one to reach the God King level from the high-level heavenly deity level. Qin Yu was unable to determine how long it would take to reach the God King level. Thus, the first path was impossible. The second path, to become the #1 artifact crafting expert comparable to the craftsman god. Qin Yu possessed sufficient confidence in himself. There were several important points to becoming an artifact crafting expert. First, someone must be able to teach you how to craft artifacts. Crafting was a skill. If there was no one to teach you how to craft artifacts, then it would be impossible for you to succeed. Qin Yu possessed a large amount of books left behind by the craftsman god, as well as Uncle Fu who had followed the craftsman god for countless years. Thus, learning how to craft artifacts was naturally easy. As for the other people in the divine realm, only a small number of them were able to find an artifact crafting expert to teach them. Second, having sufficient materials to craft and experiment with. Crafting artifacts was the same as other things. Practice makes perfect. Even if one were to be very powerful in theory, one would still need to experiment with ordinary divine artifacts step by step and accumulate experience in order to become an artifact crafting expert. Similarly, experimentation would require a large amount of materials. Without sufficient wealth, would one dare to use materials like that? Qin Yu dared to do so because he possessed a large amount of wealth left behind by the craftsman god. Third, controlling fire. In other words, the level of one's divine sense. As he possessed Lu Xing's tear, the current Qin Yu's divine sense was comparable to that of a low-level heavenly deity. How many heavenly deities were there in the divine realm? To have even heavenly deities craft artifacts? Fourth, the level of flames within one's body. In order to melt some materials, one would need flames. Qin Yu was currently at the late stage of the origin stage. His flames were still the black divine flames. However, he needed to take a step forward. The true flames within Qin Yu's body were the white pure flames. Furthermore, Qin Yu also possessed the refining flame wristband. Likely, no one would be able to match the amount of flames he possessed. Fifth, and also the final point, the comprehension of the array path. Qin Yu had spent close to 90,000 years to comprehend the first stage of the array path. Although this was the first stage of the array path that had gone astray, the fastest person in the history of the divine realm to comprehend the first stage of the array path had also spent 100,000 years. As for Che-Ho Yuan, he had spent 1,000,000 years to comprehend the first stage. There was no need to mention Qin Yu's talent in the array path. On top of that, he also had Che-Ho Yuan's experience and advice. This allowed Qin Yu to not take the wrong path. As his talent was better than Che-Ho Yuan's, he would not take the wrong path. On top of that, all the other conditions were close to perfection. If Qin Yu was unable to become another craftsman god, then it could only be said that the heavens wanted him dead. Qin Yu was firm in his conviction. He wholeheartedly focused on deducing the array path. As time passed, Qin Yu's comprehension of the array path grew deeper and deeper. At the same time, he felt that the ocean of formations was boundless. 120,000 years. This time around, Qin Yu had spent a total of 120,000 years researching and comprehending the array path. The reason why he stopped was because he had reached a bottleneck. Uncle Fu! Qin Yu shouted. Uncle Fu lived in the house next to Qin Yu's. Hearing Qin Yu's shout, Uncle Fu immediately walked over. Master, what's the matter? Uncle Fu, earlier, I was researching a trapping array. However, even I am unable to determine the might of this trapping array. I feel that there are many different ways to attack this trapping array. However, I am unable to determine which one it is. What should I do? Qin Yu said somewhat anxiously. Uncle Fu smiled. Master, you have finally reached this stage. When Uncle Fu said this, Qin Yu's heart relaxed. Clearly, Uncle Fu had been waiting for Qin Yu to reach this stage. Master, the deductions of the array path in your mind are all empty thoughts. They are all theoretical. Actually, when many facts are revealed, the effects might not be as you think. In the past, you might be more certain of the effects of the formation. However, as the formation becomes more and more complex, Master's consciousness is unable to determine it. At this time, you need to experiment. Uncle Fu smiled at Qin Yu. Master, do you still remember when you asked me for low-grade God Spirit Stones? I took out so many low-grade God Spirit Stones and all sorts of crystals from my storage ring? I remember. How could Qin Yu forget that scene? Uncle Fu nodded. The formation that I deduced myself, even now, I am unable to determine its might. This is because it has reached an extreme level of complexity. Therefore, I use some low-grade God Spirit Stones to set up the formation and conduct experiments. You are saying that I should conduct experiments on the formation? Then how should I conduct experiments? Qin Yu began to ponder in his heart. Kuro, Wulon, Wuhi. Let them experience the formation. No. Some formation arrays were too powerful. What if the three of them were to be seriously injured and lose their lives? Furthermore, he could not waste other people's time. After all, Xiao Hei and them also needed to train. Uncle Fu did not possess a soul. Some of the soul-based attacks were completely ineffective. He was also unable to test the might of the formation arrays. Personally experience the might of the formation arrays? That would not do either. Although he was able to remain unharmed in the Zhonglan's realm, if he were to use the Zhonglan's realm spatial energy to cancel out the attacks, then how would he be able to test the might of the formation arrays? Master, this is very simple. Learn from old Master. Casually find a place where bandits are gathered and set up a formation array there. Then, use those bandits as your experiment. Uncle Fu suggested. Qin Yu's eyes shined. Good, let's choose. Qin Yu smiled and said, The edge of the Black Dragon Pool's territory. Suddenly, Qin Yu's body trembled. A burst of aura began to spread out from Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu was slightly startled. Soon after, his eyes were filled with ecstasy. After 120,000 years, this stellar space has finally completed its evolution. Chapter 5:10. Within the Astral Space. The entire astral space was like an angry ocean, spinning hysterically. The entire space was spinning and twisting, and at the core of the spinning was the origin, which was the exact same color as the flower paste. It's just as I expected. Qin Yu's consciousness had completely fused with the astral space. Last time, Qin Yu had discovered that a small area of space around the origin was twisting and spinning, and it was slowly extending at an undetectable speed. After so many years, the twisting space had finally extended to the entire astral space. The entire astral space was spinning and vibrating. What's the next realm after the origin realm? Qin Yu began to ponder. On one side, Qin Yu's awareness was in contact with the origin. On the other side, it was in contact with a flower paste that was flowing like a liquid outside of the stellar space. The special ancient aura of the flower paste space caused Qin Yu to feel very calm. So, Qin Yu's consciousness suddenly woke up. Qin Yu's awareness was able to sense that the origin was expanding and contracting like a heart. Although it was very faint, so faint that Qin Yu could barely sense it after fusing with his consciousness. The origin is shrinking. Over the years, the origin had become smaller and smaller, and now it was only the size of a quail egg. But in the past, Qin Yu couldn't sense the changes in the origin just by fusing with his consciousness. But now he did. The origin expanded and shrank, and every time it went through this process, it would become slightly smaller. He hadn't noticed it in the past, but now he did. What did this mean? It meant that the origin was shrinking by a large margin, so large that Qin Yu could sense it. In an instant, Qin Yu's consciousness completely returned to his body. Opening his eyes, Qin Yu's lips curled into a smile. The entire astral space has completely transformed, and the origin's transformation is about to reach its end. The next realm should be. Qin Yu's mind was like a flash of lightning as various scenes appeared one after another. The origin had shrunk to its limit and suddenly exploded, forming countless stars and evolving into the entire universe. There were also cases where the origin shrank to the extreme, forming another black hole. There were also cases where the origin point of an astral space exploded and entered the flower paste space. These scenes represented some of the insights Qin Yu had gained over the years. Qin Yu knew that these scenes could become the next realm after the origin realm. Every realm represented a path of evolution, but there was only one path that was perfect and could allow one to ascend to the ultimate evolution path. Which path was that? Qin Yu was not sure. If you take the wrong path, you will reach the extreme. Although it won't be the most perfect path, the attack power will definitely be very strong. Qin Yu thought to himself. In Qin Yu's opinion, if the origin was shrunk to the limit and evolved again, it would evolve into a new black hole. Then, a new origin was formed. At that time, the origin power would be condensed to a terrifying level. Qin Yu believed that this was a circular path, but it was a side path. When this side path reached the extreme, the attack power wouldn't be weak. Qin Yu had a feeling that he wouldn't fail if he took this path. However, it couldn't be considered a success. Which is the most correct path and the ultimate path? Qin Yu sighed inwardly. Unfortunately, he had thought of all kinds of evolutionary paths, but none of them made him feel perfect. What Qin Yu pursued was the feeling of enlightenment he had when he comprehended the black hole realm. Qin Yu believed that if he were to one day think of that evolutionary path and have a pleasantly surprised feeling of enlightenment, then perhaps it would be the most successful evolutionary path. The origin is still shrinking. According to this rate, it should take hundreds of years before the origin shrinks to its limit. I still have hundreds to thousands of years to prepare. Qin Yu thought to himself, if I can't figure out that evolutionary path in these hundreds of years, I can only take other paths. Qin Yu understood very well. The moment the origin shrank to its limit, he had to make a choice to guide the origin realm to the next realm. Master, what's wrong? Uncle Fu asked. Qin Yu woke up. He smiled and said, "It's nothing. From today onwards, in the next several hundred years, I've decided to stop researching the array path. I'll go to the edge of the Black Dragon Pool and find a territory to experiment with the formation arrays that I've deduced." Several hundred years, to the deduction of formation arrays, was too short a time. At Qin Yu's current level, the formation arrays that he needed to deduce generally required over 1,000 years or even longer to succeed. Several hundred years was simply useless. In these several hundred years, he would be experimenting with formation arrays while comprehending the next stage of the stellar transformation. Uncle Fu, you continue to stay in the Jianglan's realm. I'll go to the edge of the Black Dragon Pool and find a territory by myself. There's no need to trouble Xiao Hei with this matter. Qin Yu instructed and then disappeared from the Jianglan's realm. Through the Jianglan's realm, Qin Yu's divine awareness discovered that there was no one on this remote official road. Thus, Qin Yu appeared on this road. After that, he proceeded forward with a gentle speed. Leaving the Sealfield village and choosing a mountain to train on was the plan that Qin Yu and them had prepared. Naturally, when they were in the Sealfield village, they had purchased a map of the powers surrounding the Yuchi city. This sort of map was very cheap. It only required a single low-quality divine spiritual stone. After all, the bandits' territory surrounding the Yuchi city was something that anyone who had lived for a long time would know. Back then, I had planned to choose a mountain to train on together with Faye. Never would I have expected that he would have gone to the Azura Sea now. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. He then suppressed this sort of thought. Qin Yu's speed was not fast. However, he had a special rhythm. Maintaining this speed and rhythm, Qin Yu had already walked for 2 entire days. If someone were to look at Qin Yu's eyes, they would discover that Qin Yu's eyes were lifeless. That was because Qin Yu had only slightly paid attention to the way he walked. Practically all of his attention was focused on thinking about the next stage of the origin realm. In the past, Qin Yu had spent over 200,000 years studying the array path. This had caused Qin Yu's soul's level to increase a bit. His divine awareness had become much stronger and his ability to deduce things had become much stronger. Within Qin Yu's mind, the scene of a revolving nebula, the scene of a Lu Xing, the scene of a floating stellar core, the scene of a planet transforming into a star, the scene of a star exploding into a star, the scene of a star exploding into a black hole. After that, it formed the origin. One scene after another flashed past Qin Yu's mind like lightning. After that, Qin Yu's mind began to change with lightning speed. All kinds of possible transformations were appearing unceasingly. After that, they were being filtered by Qin Yu. One branch transformations after another appeared in Qin Yu's mind. After the transformations, Qin Yu immediately discarded the branch paths that increased his strength. After that, Qin Yu spent even more effort researching the branch paths that increased his strength. While he was pondering, suddenly, "Oh, it's you." A voice directly entered Qin Yu's ears. Even though Qin Yu was pondering, he still paid a bit of attention to the outside world. Qin Yu's mind immediately stopped analyzing the transformations of the stellar transformations. Qin Yu's eyes instantly turned spirited. He raised his head and looked towards the left. There was a white-robed youth flying through the air. The white-robed youth smiled and nodded towards Qin Yu, then flew over to Qin Yu's side. "This seems to be the 3rd time we've met." "Right, it's the 3rd time." Qin Yu smiled as he replied. The white-robed youth was none other than Huang Jing. "Haha, you were also in the restaurant that day. You should know that I'm a girl now. There's no need for me to conceal myself." Huang Jing lightly smiled. The white warrior outfit she wore immediately changed into a yellow gauze gown. Right before Qin Yu, the gentle and quiet youth turned into a gentle and quiet young girl. "Lady Huang Jing, I am Qin Yu," Qin Yu said respectfully. Qin Yu remembered that this Huang Jing was the large group captain of Mount Dazzling Gold. Her status was one of the top upper echelons in the entire eastern region of the Divine Realm. Furthermore, this Huang Jing ought to be a high-level heavenly deity. Qin Yu remembered that the gray-clothed man was able to freeze over 30 cultivators with a single thought. Only Huang Jing was able to slowly struggle free. Although the gray-clothed man was able to suppress Huang Jing with a slight increase in strength, Huang Jing's strength was still not to be looked down upon. "Do not call me Lady Huang Jing. I am not used to it. You can just call me Huang Jing," said Huang Jing with a smile. Huang Jing's smile easily gave others a warm feeling. Qin Yu nodded. "Huang Jing, as far as I know, it's been over 1,000 years since I last saw you. Could it be that you've been in Yuchi City for the past 1,000 years? 100,000 years in the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm was equivalent to over 1,000 years in the outside world. No, last time, I brought some subordinates to accompany my younger brother. However, this time around, I have come to see my younger brother by myself." Huang Jing explained with a smile. "Oh." Qin Yu nodded. "Huang Jing, weren't you in Mount Dazzling Gold? Why is your younger brother here?" Qin Yu clearly remembered that when Huang Jing's subordinates were chatting in the restaurant, they had also revealed a piece of information. That Huang Jing's younger brother was very powerful, much more powerful than ordinary cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold. Huang Jing lightly smiled. Although my younger brother has also reached the heavenly deity level, he does not like the atmosphere of Mount Dazzling Gold. Thus, he decided to live in Yuchi City. Forget about it, let's not talk about this anymore. Can you tell me about your situation? Just like this, Qin Yu and Huang Jing walked side by side on the road. They walked past the lake and walked past the mountain forest. The two of them were casually chatting about each other's matters. Qin Yu did not conceal his situation and merely slightly changed some of the important matters. We're about to arrive. Huang Jing suddenly looked to her surroundings. She then smiled to Qin Yu and said, "Never would I have expected that unknowingly, I've already arrived at a fork in the road. Right now, I will be heading north. What about you?" "Heading south," Qin Yu replied. Indeed, the headquarters of the Black Dragon Pool was located at a place relatively far to the south. Qin Yu still had to proceed south. After all, this was an official road and there were no bandits here. Huang Jing seemed to be a bit disappointed. She then lightly smiled. "In that case, let's meet again in the future. I'll be going to my younger brother's place first. Goodbye." Qin Yu nodded with a smile on his face. Huang Jing's figure immediately flew up and the ends of her gown fluttered in the wind. As she was flying up, Huang Jing suddenly turned to look at Qin Yu. "Qin Yu, truth be told, the feeling of being by your side earlier was very comfortable." "Very comfortable." Qin Yu was taken aback. "Don't think too much about it. It is very comfortable and my heart is calmer. I believe that if I am by your side more often, my rate of cultivation will increase greatly." "All right, goodbye." Huang Jing smiled at Qin Yu. Then, she quickly flew northward. Qin Yu watched as Huang Jing's figure disappeared into the horizon. "Comfortable?" Qin Yu revealed a self-deprecating smile. Then, he continued moving southward. For Qin Yu, meeting Huang Jing was just a minor event in his journey. However, they had met 3 times in a row. Additionally, they had been separated for over 1,000 years. For them to meet again, it was indeed fate. This time around, Qin Yu increased his speed. He even began to control the space around his body to counteract a portion of the gravitational force. His speed was extremely fast. In merely 2 hours, he had traveled a distance that would take him 2 days to travel. In a single breath, Qin Yu passed through the territory of the Black Dragon Pool and arrived at the southern region of the Black Dragon Pool. The southern region of the Black Dragon Pool was very sparsely populated. There were also no villages. Normally, there would not be many people there. As for Qin Yu, he chose a location at the southern edge of the Black Dragon Pool's territory. Although this location was located at the edge of the Black Dragon Pool's territory, there would still be many people from the Black Dragon Pool that would pass through this place. According to Qin Yu's plan, these people would become the people to test out his spirit formation. If these people were to be blamed, then they could only blame the Black Dragon Pool for being the one that Qin Yu was most familiar with among the 3 great bandit powers outside of Yuchi City. Not bad. Although this mountain is relatively small, it could still be considered to have verdant hills and limpid waters. Qin Yu looked to the mountain in front of him. This mountain was verdant and lush with many plants and trees. Although this mountain could not be considered to be large, with a height of only 2,000 meters, Qin Yu was very fond of it. "From today onwards, I can be considered to have occupied a mountain as a king. This mountain shall be called Mount Bewitchu." Qin Yu displayed a smile on his face. Then he began to walk toward Mount Bewitchu with large strides. Chapter 5:11. The Mount Bewitchu had verdant hills and limpid waters. There were even some demon beasts active in the mountain forest. There were no traces of humans in the entire mountain forest. It was very quiet. Following the arrival of Qin Yu, this Mount Bewitchu that was located at the southern border of the Black Dragon Pool now had a new master. The pond water was so clear that one could see the bottom. One could see the glossy rocks at the bottom of the pond as well as all kinds of fish swimming in the pond. There was a wooden house next to the pool. Outside of the wooden house stood a black-gowned, long-haired youth. Behind this youth was a slightly respectful old man who had a smile on his face. "Uncle Fu, from today onwards, I will be living in this Mount Bewitch You. I will not be entering the Zhonglan's realm for the time being. It's only several hundred years. It's better to live in the outside world. This will also allow Xiao Hei and them to have more time to train." Qin Yu said with a light smile. "Yes, master," Uncle Fu said respectfully. Qin Yu swept his gaze all around him. He couldn't help but feel relaxed and happy. This place is very good. In a moment, I will set up a formation array around this Mount Bewitch You and let the people of the Black Dragon Pool have a taste of it. Master, before I test out the formation array, I have something that I need to show you, Uncle Fu suddenly said. "Oh." Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu in surprise. "What is it?" Uncle Fu said respectfully. "When the old master left, he left some things with me. Among them, he instructed me that when Master's array path reaches the initial stage of the palace hall, Master would be able to look at this scroll." A golden scroll suddenly appeared in Uncle Fu's hand. "Initial stage of the palace hall?" Qin Yu smiled. Indeed, compared to Uncle Fu's accomplishments in the array path, he could only be considered as having just reached the initial stage of the palace hall. Although his current comprehension of the array path was much stronger than his comprehension of the array path from 100,000 years ago. "What's inside this scroll?" Qin Yu received it curiously. Uncle Fu said with a smile. "Master will know once you see it." This could be considered as some lighthouses on Master's path of the array path. Filled with curiosity, Qin Yu inserted his divine awareness into this golden scroll. "Hello, my successor. By the time you see this scroll, I reckon that you would have already opened the Artifacts Hall and taken control of the entire Bewitching God Temple. Your comprehension of the array path has also reached a certain level. The reason I left this scroll behind is to let you know some of the detailed levels of array Dao, so that you can have a clearer understanding of your own position. The array formation ocean is boundless and no one knows its ultimate limit. Some formation masters roughly categorize their understanding of formations as the first realm, the second realm, and the third realm of the array path. But I think this kind of positioning is wrong. This was because everyone's first stage of the array Dao was different. For example, when I first comprehended the first level of array path, in terms of strength, I was 100 times weaker than when I spent 1 billion years to comprehend the first level of array path. For example, my servant Fu. Although Fu has been progressing in the first level of the array Dao, his array Dao strength is comparable to an ordinary second-level expert of the array Dao. Therefore, it was impossible to distinguish the level of formations in detail by just using the 3 major realms. This also caused me to personally determine the level of formations. Ever since the birth of the God realm, I can locate the corresponding level of all the formations that have appeared. In the 900 scrolls of the array path, there were many examples of formations, from simple to complex. However, the examples in the 900 scrolls of the array path were all level 1 formations, which are the most basic formations. Reading up to this point, Qin Yu's heart was shocked. Back then, when he completely grasped the 900 scrolls of the array path and comprehended the first realm of the array path, he thought that he was amazing. But now, it seemed that those were merely the lowest level of formations. As for the levels of formations, I have temporarily determined them to be 8 levels. The power and effects of these 8 levels of formations, I have recorded them in detail in the attached scroll. Level 1 formations are considered the foundation. To be able to set up level 2 formations, one can be considered to have stepped into the Palace of Formations. To be able to set up level 3 formations, one can be considered an expert of formations. To be able to set up level 4 formations, one can be considered an expert of formations. As for setting up level 5 formations, in the divine realm, in order to forge a heavenly divine artifact, one's cultivation in formations must at least reach the level of level 5 formations. Qin Yu secretly remembered it. To be able to set up level 5 formations, one can forge a heavenly divine artifact. In the entire divine realm, there are not many people who are able to set up level 5 formations. As for setting up level 6 formations, Haha, in the entire Divine Realm, there are probably less than 5 people who are able to set up level 6 formations. As for level 7 formations, level 8 formations. In history, only I, Cheho Yuan, am able to set them up. Qin Yu sucked in a mouthful of cold air. From the classification of formation arrays, Qin Yu was able to clearly sense Cheho Yuan's strength in the array path. Level 8 formations. To be able to set up level 7 and level 8 formations, only Cheho Yuan was able to do so. Qin Yu tried his best to calm his somewhat excited heart and continued reading. Among the 8 levels of formations, I am the only one who has reached level 7 and level 8. For the time being, I can ignore them. Level 1 to level 6 formations are already capable of locating the experts of the Divine Realm. Level 1 to level 6 formations all go from simple to complex. Even in the eyes of the array masters who are able to set up level 6 formations, the more superpositions, the more complex the formations are, the more powerful the formations are. Back then, I also thought so. However, when I reached the 3rd level of the array path and set up level 7 formations, and even my highest level of formation was level 8, only then did I discover that level 1 to level 6 goes from simple to complex. From the 7th level onwards, the setting up of formations became even simpler. The Great Tao is the simplest. Perhaps this is the logic behind it. Qin Yu firmly remembered these words. However, Qin Yu was also somewhat confused. The more superpositions there were, the more powerful the formations would be. Formations required the various parts to be perfectly combined together. For example, 10 superpositions would naturally not be as powerful as 16 superpositions. However, why would level 7 and level 8 formations go from complex to simple? This is truly profound. Qin Yu bitterly smiled in his heart. The current him did not understand this logic. Perhaps he would understand it in the future. Regarding the effects of the 8 levels of formations, I have already given detailed examples in the supplementary scroll. I have given examples of the weakest and strongest formations of each level. My successor, the current you, it is best for you to not research level 7 and level 8 formations. After all, if you do not have a good foundation, you will not be able to research level 7 and level 8 formations. Instead, it will be detrimental to you. Of course, level 8 formations is my personal classification. It is not publicly recognized by the Divine Realm. Furthermore, in my heart, above level 8 formations, there should be level 9 formations and even level 10 formations. However, the current me is unable to make any more breakthroughs. My successor, I will leave the Bewitching God Temple to you. I also hope that you will be able to help me pass on my title of Craftsman God. Work hard, my successor. After putting away the golden scroll, Qin Yu grew silent for a moment. Uncle Fu, give me the supplementary scroll containing Senior Cheho's detailed explanation of level 8 formations. Qin Yu looked at Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu smiled and nodded. Master, there is one scroll with detailed explanation of level 1 to level 3 formations. There are 3 scrolls with detailed explanation of level 4 formations, 12 scrolls with detailed explanation of level 5 formations, and 98 scrolls with detailed explanation of level 6 formations. There is only one scroll for level 7 and 8 formations. After saying that, a pile of golden scrolls appeared in front of Uncle Fu. Qin Yu immediately used his divine awareness to roughly scan through the scrolls. Qin Yu did not carefully read through the scrolls. He only roughly scanned through them. Cheho Yuan had recorded the weakest and strongest formations of each level. In other words, there were only 2 formations of each level. One was strong and one was weak. Only level 8 formations were recorded. These 98 scrolls only recorded 2 formations. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. Complicated to the extreme, it was indeed terrifying. Master, when other people in the divine realm forge divine artifacts to reinforce their formations, because the formations are too complicated, it causes them to take an exceptionally long time. This also causes them to take an extremely long time to forge a heavenly divine artifact. However, old master, forged a heavenly divine artifact with incomparable ease. Uncle Fu said proudly. How could the title of the craftsman god be taken lightly? Uncle Fu, I have not carefully read through the scrolls. Tell me, what level is my current formation level? Qin Yu asked. Uncle Fu said respectfully. Master is extremely talented. In merely 200,000 years, you can be considered to have stepped into the level of level 3 formations. Although it is considered to be one of the weaker level 3 formations, it is already very impressive. Level 3 formations. Qin Yu nodded slightly. This speed could be considered to be not bad. Uncle Fu, what about you? Qin Yu suddenly became curious. Qin Yu knew that in the entire divine realm, there were less than 5 people who had reached the level of level 6 formations. As for level 5 formations, they were definitely extremely rare. After all, at that level, one could forge heavenly divine artifacts. Uncle Fu smiled modestly. Back then, old master would often give pointers to this old servant. This old servant also did not dare to slack off in the slightest. After so many years, I can be considered to have stepped into the level of level 5 formations. Chapter 5:12. Level 5 Formation Array. Doesn't that mean that I would be able to craft heavenly divine artifacts? Qin Yu said in a slightly surprised manner. Uncle Fu shook his head and said, reaching level 5 formation array comprehension is merely one of the requirements for crafting heavenly divine artifacts. At the same time, there are also other requirements regarding flames, materials, and so on. As I do not have a soul myself, I am naturally unable to use my divine awareness to control the flames. Thus, I am also unable to craft heavenly divine artifacts. Qin Yu also felt pity for Uncle Fu in his heart. Not having a soul was indeed a very large restriction. Uncle Fu, you should rest first. I will set up the formation array now. Qin Yu said with a smile. He then started floating in the air. After that, Qin Yu's hands were like illusions. Rays of light flew out from Qin Yu's hands. At the same time, there were also countless runes, seals, and symbols. The sparkling divine spiritual stones suddenly flew out from Qin Yu's hands. 1, 2, 3, 24. A total of 24 low-quality divine spiritual stones flew out in all directions of Mount Bewitch Yu. Each and every one of the low-quality divine spiritual stones were radiating a magnificent brilliance. Qin Yu, who was setting up the formation array, gracefully took out numerous divine spiritual seals. His speed was both slow and fast. The amount of divine energy contained in his seals was both large and small. He cleverly made the entire formation array work together. This formation array was merely a level 1 formation array. It was merely a slightly more powerful illusion formation array among level 1 formation arrays. The Black Dragon Pool was actually a beautiful lake with a circumference of 100 miles. There was not a single fish living in this beautiful lake. It was a completely desolate place of life. There were only some aquatic plants growing in this lake. Beside the Black Dragon Pool was a luxurious and tall palace. This palace was the Black Dragon Palace. Surrounding the Black Dragon Palace were 3 other palaces. These 3 palaces were the palaces of the 3 great experts under the command of the leader of the Black Dragon Pool, Lord Black Dragon. In terms of liveliness, those 3 palaces were much livelier than the Black Dragon Palace. That was because there were only a couple servants in the Black Dragon Palace. Those servants were merely there to maintain the cleanliness of the Black Dragon Palace. Finally, Lord Black Dragon himself had not appeared in the Black Dragon Palace for a very long time. The 3 great experts under Lord Black Dragon were Xiong He, Taoist Lu Su, and Mei Ji. Other than these 3 great experts, the majority of the Black Dragon subordinates have never seen Black Dragon himself. Where exactly was Black Dragon himself? Why hasn't he appeared yet? Is he dead? No one dared to ask. The only ones who knew the answer were the 3 lords. The Black Dragon Pool was extremely powerful. Naturally, they had a lot of men under them. Any one of the three lords could easily take out 100,000 men. If one were to compare the power of the three lords, then Xionghe would be the most powerful. Lord Bear Palace. This was the palace among the three palaces that belonged to Xionghe. Xionghe controlled over half of the people in the Black Dragon Pool. The majority of the matters were decided by him. However, in the past couple months, Xionghe was somewhat vexed. That was because several tens of his subordinates had disappeared for no reason at all. If they were killed by someone, he, Xionghe, would not care about it and would immediately dispatch people to take revenge. But he couldn't find out who killed his men. In the main hall of the Tyrant Bear Palace, a sturdy, dark-faced man who was nearly 3 meters tall sat on the main hall. He supported his chin with one hand and frowned slightly. A clear sound of footsteps could be heard as a black-clothed woman quickly walked in. Seeing the dark-faced man's gaze sweep over, the black-clothed woman hurriedly said, "Sir, after our investigation, we finally found a suspicious point." "Speak," said Xionghe indifferently. The black-clothed woman said respectfully, although these 40-plus people were separated into 3 groups to handle matters, they all had a common point. That is, they were all heading toward the south to handle matters. This subordinate dispatched people to travel along the way. Ultimately, they discovered a matter. "Amen?" Xionghe snorted. His gaze swept toward the black-clothed woman. About several thousand miles south of our Black Dragon Pool's headquarters, there is a small mountain. I had dispatched people to investigate along the way. However, when they arrived at that small mountain, they discovered a matter. The people that entered that small mountain would get lost in that small mountain and never come out again. Because of this, 3 more people from the investigation team went missing in that small mountain. After the black-clothed woman finished saying those words, she quietly waited for Xionghe's orders. "A small mountain." Xionghe straightened his body and looked at the black-clothed woman. "What is its name?" The black-clothed woman frowned and said, "Sir, the investigation team returned and reported a very strange matter. Normally, we would not care about that small mountain and would only consider it as a nameless mountain. However, when they went to investigate this time around, they discovered a stele erected at the foot of the mountain. On the stele were 3 words. Mount bewitch you. Mount bewitch you? Xionghe slightly frowned. "Sir, that stele appeared to be newly erected." Combined with the fact that the entire mountain possesses a strange ability to trap people, this subordinate guesses that there might be a certain person or a certain small power that has occupied that mountain. Furthermore, that person has set up a formation around that Mount bewitch you. The black-clothed woman spoke out her thoughts. Xionghe snorted coldly. "A certain person or a certain power. They are truly daring. Could it be that they do not know that the surroundings of our Black Dragon Pool do not permit any powers to interfere?" The Black Dragon Pool was extremely tyrannical. There was simply not a single power that existed at the edge of their sphere of influence. There were in the past. However, those powers were all eradicated by the Black Dragon Pool. How could they allow others to sleep beside their bed? They actually dared to trap my people. Immediately release them. Very well. Have your subordinates find people proficient in formations and some astute people. Have them break the formation of that Mount bewitch you. After that, kill the person who set up that formation," said Xionghe coldly. The black-clothed woman said respectfully, "Yes, sir." The Black Dragon Pool had a lot of subordinates. Naturally, there would be people proficient in all kinds of fields. "Lady E, please rest assured. This subordinate will definitely kill all of the enemies on Mount bewitch you." Lu Qian bowed to the black-clothed woman and gave his promise. "Qian, you do things with propriety. However, you must be careful this time around. The might of the formation on Mount bewitch you ought to be quite powerful. You must not repeat the mistakes of others." The black-clothed woman said coldly, "Yes." Lu Qian was extremely respectful. After leaving the headquarters of the Black Dragon Pool, Lu Qian brought 20 subordinates and rushed toward Mount bewitch you. The speed of this group of subordinates could be considered to be fast. After spending 2 days, they finally arrived at the outer region of Mount Bewitchu. Stop. Lu Qian waved his hand and ordered his subordinates. Lu Qian was born in the divine realm. After that, he lived in the Seal Field village. However, Lu Qian felt that the amount of divine spiritual stones he had to pay every 1,000 years in the Seal Field village was not enough for him to cultivate. Thus, he entered the Black Dragon Pool. After so many years of struggle, he managed to make his way through the Black Dragon Pool. He could be considered to be a low-level captain-like character. Last time, his childhood sweetheart Ziyun and Xing Yuan became husband and wife. Faced with this matter, Lu Qian did not use martial strength to deal with Ziyun and Xing Yuan. It wasn't that he didn't want to. Rather, it was that he was unable to see through Xing Yuan's good friend Qin Yu and the other two. Lu Qian was such a cautious person. He had never believed in feelings. In his heart, authority and strength were the most important things. Feelings were merely empty. Lord Lu, the words Mount Bewitchu are written on the steel. Among the 20 subordinates, a middle-aged man spoke. Lu Qian lightly nodded his head. Everyone, this place is Mount Bewitchu. The entire Mount Bewitchu is covered by a formation. Brother Sanyang, you are the most proficient in formations among us. You should go and have a look. A middle-aged man with a goatee walked over. He casually picked up a few stones from the ground and threw them into the interior of Mount Bewitchu. Everyone was able to clearly see that those stones naturally rolled onto a stone on the mountain. There's no change. Brother Sanyang, do you know what kind of formation this is? Lu Qian asked. The goatee man did not say anything. Instead, he shot out a ray of divine energy into Mount Bewitchu. An enormous light screen immediately appeared on the entire Mount Bewitchu. At the same time, countless densely packed runes, seals and symbols floated on top of the light screen. The goatee man's expression became somewhat solemn. Lord Lu, if my guess is correct, this formation should be a formation from the divine realm. Furthermore, it should be a relatively profound formation from the divine realm. Lu Qian felt that the situation was bad. He couldn't help but look at the other people in the group. Lord Lu, what Brother Sanyong said is correct. This formation is indeed very profound. The other people also nodded their heads in agreement. Divine Realms Formation Books. After being in the Black Dragon Pool for so many years, I have only seen a single golden scroll. Based on my comprehension of formations in the lower realm, I have studied that set of formation books and finally gained some understanding. However, it's still not enough to break this formation. The goatee man said with a solemn expression. Lu Qian and the others did not know that at this moment, Qin Yu was using his divine sense to observe them. With the assistance of Lu Xing's tear, Qin Yu was able to extend his divine sense to a distance of 1,000 meters. At this moment, Qin Yu was standing on top of a tree on Mount Bewitchu. He was only 300 meters away from Lu Qian and the others. Formation books? And a single golden scroll? At the beginning, when Qin Yu heard the conversation between those people, he had thought that this Sanyong was very powerful. But now, he heard that this guy had only seen a single scroll of formation books from the divine realm. Lord Lu, I can only use a stupid method to sense the might of this formation. This Sanyong looked to Lu Qian. Lord Lu, use a long rope to tie my waist. You all stay outside the mountain. I will go in by myself first. After 10 breaths of time, no matter what happens, you all can directly pull me out. Lu Qian thought for a moment and nodded his head. I've really come in. Haha. The rope is something that can break. A smile appeared on Qin Yu's face. Soon after, he floated down like a gentle wind. Uncle Fu instantly arrived beside Qin Yu. The two of them, one in front and one behind, were rushing toward the foot of the mountain. Remember, no matter what happens in 10 breaths of time, you must pull me out. Sanyong instructed once again. Brother Sanyong, please be at ease. The others immediately guaranteed. At this moment, Sanyang, who had a rope tied around his waist, entered Mount Bewitchu with ease. Right after Sanyang entered Mount Bewitchu, he felt that the surrounding scenery had completely changed. What a powerful formation! The person who set up this formation must be a formation grandmaster of the divine realm. Sanyang sighed in his heart. Books on array formations were still very precious in the god realm. How could ordinary people possibly see them, much less research them? This Sanyang did not know that this formation was merely a level 1 formation. 10 breaths of time is up? Why didn't you pull me out? Sanyang was a bit puzzled. Pull me back. Sanyang shouted loudly. At this moment, Sanyang did not know that he was unable to go out by himself. Merely, no matter how much he shouted, the rope tied around his waist did not have any reaction. Sanyang turned his head around and looked at the rope that connected him to the outside world. His expression immediately changed and he muttered, "No, it's an illusion. It's not real. I can't believe it, I can't believe it." Lu Qian and the others fiercely pulled. However, they only managed to pull out half of the rope. The rope was cut by someone. Upon seeing this, Lu Qian's expression changed. Brother Sanyang has also fallen into the formation. What should we do now? Immediately, some people started to become anxious. Lu Qian, since you've come to my territory, how could I not invite you over? A voice suddenly sounded from Mount Bewitchu. Lu Qian and the others immediately looked toward Mount Bewitchu in shock. The misty radiance of Mount Bewitchu appeared once again. Numerous and densely packed talisman seals and symbols were floating on the light barrier. At the same time, the light barrier suddenly expanded. The range of the light barrier increased by 100 meters. Immediately, Lu Qian and the others were covered by the formation while they were stunned. Lu Qian, oh Lu Qian, you've brought someone who only knows the surface of the divine realm's formations to break my formation. Truly, the range of the divine realm's formations will change according to the amount of energy. You all don't even know about the most basic point. Qin Yu retrieved the divine energy that he poured into the formation. The range of the formation immediately returned to its original state. At this moment, the energy of the formation was completely supplied by the divine spiritual stones. As for Lu Qian and the others, they were already completely trapped within the formation. Ah! Let me out! Bastard, let me out! At a certain location in Mount Bewitchu, a blond old man was crazily shouting. He had already been trapped here for several months. At this moment, Lu Qian walked past him. However, he did not discover that crazy old man at all. Right now, there are several tens of people testing the formation on Mount Bewitchu. However, it's still not enough. Qin Yu stood on top of a tree and looked at those people who had lost their heads out of fear. He muttered to himself, "These people's strengths are relatively weak." However, after a period of time, the experts of the Black Dragon Pool would likely not be able to sit still anymore. At that time, I would be able to test out powerful formations. Chapter 513. MT Bewitchu. In front of Qin Yu's wooden house, there was a shallow pond. Qin Yu had rolled up his trousers and was standing in the middle of the pond. Barefoot, he was stepping on the slippery stones at the bottom of the pond. As for Qin Yu, he was looking at the fishes in the pond with his eyes wide open. Both of his hands were stretched out as if he was ready to catch the fishes at any time. Ha ha! Seeing Qin Yu acting like this from the shore, Uncle Fu also started to laugh happily. Qin Yu did not use his divine sense to lock onto the fishes in the pond. Instead, he used the most ancient and most primitive method. He used his eyes to look at the fishes and then used his hands to catch them. As Qin Yu caught the fishes again and again, the shining white pond water splashed up. "Heh, I don't believe that I won't be able to catch a single one." Qin Yu rolled up his sleeves. Actually, Qin Yu only needed to think about it and this set of divine armor would automatically roll up. However, Qin Yu felt as if he had returned to his childhood and was enjoying this kind of fun. "Master, The fishes of the divine realm are not the same as the fishes of the mortal realm. Those fishes are all demonic beasts. Although they are low-level demonic beasts of the divine realm and their attack power is very weak, they are also intelligent. If you continue to catch them like this, it will be very hard for you to catch them. Uncle Fu reminded from afar. Hearing Uncle Fu's voice, the fishes in the pond jumped out of the pond and then scuttled back into the water. Clearly, they were trying to anger Qin Yu. Too cunning. Qin Yu slowly exhaled in anger. Then, he stared at those fishes with lightning-like eyes. Both of his hands turned into afterimages as he fiercely plunged them into the pond water. The fishes immediately scuttled away. The fishes were incomparably nimble and slippery in the water. Qin Yu was unable to catch them at all. Good, good, good. Qin Yu said the word, good, 3 times in a row. Those fishes were actually unceasingly jumping out of the pond water from the other side. Humph, humph. Qin Yu smiled brilliantly. The water in the pool suddenly disappeared, and the fishes that were originally swimming in the pool fell onto the rocks at the bottom of the pool. Without water, even if they were fishes from the god realm, they could only move with great difficulty. Let's see how you're going to escape this time. Qin Yu walked over with a smile and grabbed one of them with each hand. Those fish widened their eyes and glared at Qin Yu. Master, you're using the Zhonglan's realm to catch fish? Uncle Fu opened his eyes wide. Qin Yu turned around and smiled brightly at Uncle Fu. Then, he looked at the 2 fish in his hands and said, Humph, you are still arrogant in front of me. Be careful that I don't cook you. The 2 fishes immediately became anxious. Spare my life, spare my life. The 2 fishes actually spoke human language, and their voices were incomparably clear. Qin Yu was stunned for a while before he came to his senses. This was a fish from the god realm, not a fish from the mortal world. Even those who had just ascended needed to stabilize their bodies to withstand the god realm's restrictions. No matter how weak the god realm's fishes were, it was natural for them to be able to speak human language. Do not resist now, otherwise I'll roast you. Qin Yu threatened. Don't resist, don't resist. A green fish and a pink fish said repeatedly. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. With an intention, these 2 fishes were sucked into the Zhonglan's realm. Never had I expected that Master would have such a childish heart. Uncle Fu said with a smile. Qin Yu waved his hand and the pool water that had been sucked into the Zhonglan's realm was sent back by Qin Yu. Qin Yu walked on to the shore. His rolled-up trousers and sleeves also automatically returned to their original state. Qin Yu no longer had the relaxed smile on his face. Master, what's wrong? Uncle Fu had already sensed the change in Qin Yu's mood. Qin Yu's gaze was misty. He said indifferently, Childish heart, I also want to have it. Unfortunately, a long time ago I no longer have it. Do you think that I catch fishes for fun? Uncle Fu, I would usually not allow myself to rest by myself. If I'm not training, I'm deducing formation arrays or I'm accompanying my brothers. Very rarely would I be by myself and not do anything. Do you know why? Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu shook his head. Qin Yu laughed at himself. You don't understand. That's because if I'm by myself and not doing anything, I'll think about a lot of things. My mind will think of many things, and the one I think of the most is Li. I want to see her, yet I can't. I want to love her, yet I can only endure it. Day after day, year after year, 10,000 years after 10,000 years. I've suppressed everything in my heart for so many years. Qin Yu held on to his chest. Heavy, very heavy, very heavy. Qin Yu raised his head and looked to the sky. A smile appeared on his face. A smile can make one feel slightly relaxed. Doing some childish things can also make one feel relaxed. I'm not a person who likes to smile. However, sometimes, I'll let myself smile. I'm not a person who has a childish heart. However, I'll still do some childish things. This way, my heart will be able to feel a little better. That heavy feeling will lessen a little. The corners of Qin Yu's eyes were slightly moist. However, Qin Yu laughed again. His eyes narrowed again. Usually, I would be constantly deducing the array Dao or training. I would never let my mind rest. However, in these days, when I stopped to rest, my mind would start to uncontrollably overthink. Qin Yu shook his head in a self-mocking manner. Uncle Fu looked at Qin Yu from the side. He didn't know what to say. Haha, don't be like this. Actually, I'm still very happy. Qin Yu smiled to Uncle Fu. Compared to when I was in the mortal realm, my current strength is many times stronger than before. Furthermore, I've also entered the divine realm. Li Er is also in the divine realm. I'm even able to sense Li Er's existence. Qin Yu pointed to the north. That's right, she's over there. Qin Yu retrieved his finger. He smiled to Uncle Fu and said, I've already been here for so many years. What's the point of working hard for a bit more? The path that I've walked, I will continue to walk forward. No one will be able to stop me. Qin Yu's voice was dull. There was no imposing manner. On his face, there was even a slight smile. However, Uncle Fu was able to sense that confidence that came from the bottom of his heart. Master, no one will be able to stop you. Uncle Fu nodded and said with certainty. Ha! Qin Yu suddenly shouted. He was filled with vitality. Uncle Fu, let's go. Let's go to the Zhonglan's realm and see what those two fish look like after they turn into humans. Inside the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm. Kuroa's residence. This time around, Qin Yu directly placed the two fish outside of Kuroa's residence. At this moment, Qin Yu and Uncle Fu had just arrived at this place. They immediately heard the sound of lively conversation. Furthermore, there were quite a few people here. Wu Lan, Wu He, you two are also here? Qin Yu was surprised to see Wu Lan and Wu He standing together with Kuro. Immediately, the 5 people in the courtyard immediately looked to Qin Yu and Uncle Fu. Big brother, where did these 2 little girls come from? Kuro immediately asked. Only then did Qin Yu look to the 2 girls. These 2 girls were very petite and exquisite. Their height was estimated to be about 160 centimeters. At this moment, the 2 girls were blinking their eyes and excitedly looking to Qin Yu. Lord Qin Yu. These 2 women bowed to Qin Yu. The 2 of them were extremely excited. In the divine realm, ordinary fish like them would not be able to move after leaving the pond water unless they passed the divine tribulation. However, in the Zhonglan's realm, without the restriction of the divine realm, they were able to take human form. What are your names? Qin Yu asked. The big guy Wu He immediately said. Master, the one wearing green clothes is called Lu Shui. The one wearing pink clothes is called Hong Yu. Lord Qin Yu didn't ask you. Lu Shui and Hong Yu immediately shouted. Then, they happily looked to Qin Yu. Lord Qin Yu, I am called Lu Shui, Hong Yu. She is called Hong Yu, Lu Shui. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. With these 2 chattering lively girls, even Kuro, Wu Lan and them started to smile more. Qin Yu couldn't help but think that his decision was indeed correct. Qin Yu stood on top of the tree and looked to his surroundings. Master, the Black Dragon Pool has already sent people to attack us 4 times in succession. The first 3 times, they were easily trapped by us. However, this time around, they have already broken through half of our formation array. Uncle Fu said from below. Qin Yu nodded. Rest assured, this person's strength in formation arrays is not that great. It's merely a level 1 formation array. It's even better if they can break through it. With their speed of breaking through formation arrays, by the time they break through this formation array, my second formation array would have already been set up. The Black Dragon Pool seemed to be truly enraged. They sent one formation array expert after another to break through Qin Yu's formation arrays. However, in Qin Yu's eyes, these formation array experts were truly too weak. Those who knew a bit of the Divine Realm's formation arrays were considered formation array experts? This was purely laughable to Qin Yu. However, those people still possessed some strength. They actually managed to break through 2 of Qin Yu's formation arrays in succession. These 2 formation arrays were both relatively weak level 2 formation arrays. As for Qin Yu, he was finally going to unleash his ruthlessness. This time around, Qin Yu was planning to set up a relatively weak level 2 formation array, a killing formation. In the past, they were all trapping formations that did not possess any destructive power. Thus, they would allow his opponents sufficient time to slowly break through the formation arrays. Lord Gongsun, please. Lu Qian was respectfully following behind a green-clothed middle-aged man. Last time, Lu Qian was trapped by Qin Yu's illusion array. Fortunately, Qin Yu did not use any killing moves on him and only trapped him. Later on, when a formation array expert managed to break through the formation array, Lu Qian managed to keep his life. This Gongsun Jin, Lord Gongsun, could be considered as the #1 formation array expert in the Xiong Lord Palace. His status was much higher than Lu Qian's. Furthermore, he had already broken through 2 of Qin Yu's formation arrays in succession. This caused Lord Xionghe to greatly reward this Gongsun Jin. However, every time Gongsun Jin managed to break through a formation array with great difficulty, Qin Yu would succeed in setting up a new formation array. This also caused the Black Dragon Pool to be unable to capture Qin Yu. You all stay outside and watch. Be careful. I will go in and break the formation array. Gongsun Jin said indifferently. He briefly inspected the formation array. Merely, the result of this inspection caused him to hesitate for a long time. However, after a long time, Gongsun Jin still stepped into the formation array. Lu Qian and his several subordinates only saw Gongsun Jin continuously forming hand seals within the formation array. However, Gongsun Jin was only able to persist for a few breaths of time. Bang! Overflowing black flames suddenly bombarded Gongsun Jin's body. There was even a trace of white flames mixed within the black flames. Boom! Before the dumbstruck expressions of Lu Qian and the others, Gongsun Jin's entire body was like a leaf being burned to ashes. Just like that, his entire body was incinerated. Run! Quickly run! Lu Qian would never forget the time when the formation array's area of coverage had suddenly increased greatly. This time around, Lu Qian was very lucky. Qin Yu did not kill him. Instead, he stood on top of a tree and watched as Lu Qian and the others fled in panic like stray dogs. They addressed you as Lord Gongsun? However, you truly do not know the immensity of heaven and earth. You wasted so much time to break through my first 2 trapping arrays. The speed at which I set up my formation array was faster than you. Could it be that you are still unable to determine the difference in strength between us? Qin Yu sighed. Destruction was easier than creation. To set up a formation array, one must perfect it from all aspects. As for destruction, one only needed to destroy some of the important areas and the formation array would naturally be destroyed. Qin Yu was faster than Gongsun Jin in setting up a formation array. The disparity between the 2 of them was too obvious. Lord Xiong Palace. Gongsun died. Xionghe's nearly 3-meter-tall body emitted a frightening domineering aura. His eyes were opened wide like fists as he stared at the trembling Lu Qian below. You, how are you still alive? Lu Qian sensed Lord Xionghe's anger. He was so scared that he started to tremble. "Oh, big brother Xiong, I've heard that you fell down on a small mountain this time. Many people died." A seductive red-clothed woman walked in with light steps. "Little sister Mei Ji, you cannot speak of big brother Xionghe like that." Big brother Xionghe was careless. Although he had only lost 7 or 8 times. A handsome man with skin as white as snow walked in. These 2 people were precisely the other 2 great experts under Lord Black Dragon of the Black Dragon Pool. Mei Ji and Daoist Lu Su. Seeing how Mei Ji and Daoist Lu Su treated him like this, Xionghe was unable to refrain his anger. Mei Ji, Lu Su, That man is merely relying on his powerful formation arrays. Humph. I shall see how his formation arrays will not be destroyed under the distortion of the space energy. A single force can defeat 10 techniques. This heavenly divine artifact of mine is not something to be trifled with. Xiong Hei opened his eyes wide. He shouted angrily, bring the troops. I shall personally go and trample Mount Bewitchu. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.